Call to order of a regular meeting, Goodyear City Council, 14 June 2010. I'll talk closer to it. Can you hear me in the back? It's on. I'll speak louder. Okay, would you join Councilmember Pizzillo in the Pledge of Allegiance, the invocation, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would please bow. Almighty Heavenly Father, please look over us today when we're doing the business of the city. Provide wisdom so we can make good decisions for all our citizens. Also provide so that we have an atmosphere in which we can have great dialogue among all here, so we can exchange ideas and hopefully put Goodyear on the right path. Also, for our servicemen overseas, please look over them, make sure they get home safe, and also look over everybody here to make sure they also get home safe tonight. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. All members of council are in attendance today. We have no expenditures to ratify. We do have 4 items on communications, however. First, we'll start with Vista, then we'll have 2 presentations on awards. But before we do that, I just want to announce that June 19th has been proclaimed in the city of Goodyear as Solar Day. So June 19th is Solar Day in Goodyear, Arizona. Now I'll pass it to Judy Svetanik for the Vista update.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, Deputy City Managers, and guests. Last November, Goodyear welcomed several VISTA members, which are our volunteers in service to America, to our city, to work with supervisors in our fire and police departments. They were tasked with creating or expanding existing programs within the departments. My role as the volunteer coordinator was to report their progress to the State Office of the National and Community Service. When I had the pleasure of introducing them to you 6 months ago, they barely had a chance to absorb the full scope of the projects. But I can definitely say that today they have made huge strides in accomplishing their goals and have been outstanding representatives and promoters of Goodyear while working with our citizens. I could tell you about their work, but I prefer that they have an opportunity to share with you personally what they've accomplished. First, I'd like to introduce Rose Beals. Rose, under the supervision of Sergeant Jeff Rogers in PD, has been working with the VIPS program, which stands for Volunteers in Police Service, and also other related projects. Rose, can you come up?
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, Council Member, and attendees. I have the opportunity to present a newly created program called YANA, which stands for You're Not Alone. The inception of the program started in 1995 by the United States Postal Service. They found that there was a need for people to be taken care of, especially our senior citizens who were physically challenged and didn't have a family member or anyone to take care of them. Several police departments adopted the program on a national level and incorporated it into their VIPS program. This fall, the Goodyear Police Department's Volunteer and Police Services will be rolling out a program called YANA in the city of Goodyear. Enrollees of the programs will receive regular wellness checks from VIPS representatives by phone and in person. YANA is a great resource for disabled seniors who enjoy independent living but have no friends or family members to take care of them. This program will also help seniors find other resources and services throughout the state of Arizona. If an emergency occurs during a phone call or home visit, the representative will arrange for a police officer to be sent out to the residents right away. YANA will open up a full service as of September 27. Prior to the opening day, there will be 2 pre-registration dates, which will be August 30th and September 13th. Participants will need to prepare and complete an application form with essential information prior to being brought into the program. I'm going to give you a timeline as to where we stand with the program in terms of the activities that are planned. On June 6th, a website was set up on our webpage for Yana. On June 11th, we sent out brochures, door hangers, business cards, and other printed material went into the printer to be completed. We also sent flyers out to Historic Goodyear announcing that a Yana survey will be conducted on June 21st by volunteers coming into their community. On the 21st, we're going to mobilize 25 CERTs, bilingual Spanish, English speaking fire and city volunteers will be conducting a door-to-door Yana survey to determine the feasibility of the program and what the interest level would be of the individuals living in that community. On the 26th, we will have volunteers from Compass Community Church Youth Group who will be compiling the data to determine what actually is the interest level of those people in that particular community. From July 1st through July 30th, we will be recruiting 150 to 200 volunteers that will be going out to 9 subdivisions to hang door hangers on 7,200 homes. And this will be providing, this door hanger will be providing information on our program and also offering an invitation to individuals to come to our opening, which is going to be on September 22nd at City Hall. On August 21st and 28th, we will be deploying 9 groups of individuals to 9 subdivisions to actually do door hangers. On September 6th, we'll be rolling out a newly created database. And this database will be able to compile all the information on our participants who are interested in the program, as well as we will be able to provide applications online for people to print and fill them out and bring them into the office or send them into our office. September 13th, we're going to send out over 200 invitations to HOAs, to church groups, to CBOs, to police and command staff, to private senior groups and organizations, and other recruiting sources. We will also do an internal announcement to employees who may have family members or relatives who would benefit from being a participant in the Yana program. On September 22nd is D-Day, and that's when Yana goes into effect. We will have a gala at the City Hall, room number 117 from 2 to 5, and we'll have a lot of individuals there, I'm hoping. On September 27th, Yana is open for business at the Veneta facility front desk. It will be manned by our VIPs who are volunteer police service. To our senior residents, you're not alone. Goodyear is here to help you. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank so many people who helped me to put this program together. I'd like to thank Chief Brown, Lieutenant Marzaka, Sergeant Rogers, city staff, churches, community, volunteers, VIPs, and most of all to P.F. Chang's, who is going to donate the food that we will be eating on the 22nd. And to everyone who worked tirelessly in the background to help put this program together and make it a success. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Rose also didn't mention, but she revised and revamped the whole of this program, and now they have all different kinds of policies and procedures for that, which is really wonderful on her part. And I can't get away without being remiss that if you want to help that week of August 21st through the 28th as a volunteer coordinator, see me later, because we can use your help going door to door. Thank you, Rose. Secondly, Norma Cunningham, under the supervision of Liliana Schuett in Neighborhood Services, has been out there taking the pulse of our community. Norma, would you like to come up and expand a little bit further what you've been doing?
Sure.
Hey, Norma.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Mayor, Council, and City Manager. I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing with our VISTA program in Neighborhood Services. As you know, we were recruited to work with the city and community leaders to identify neighborhood needs and to address those needs. When we started working with the 2 alliances, North Subdivision and Historic Goodyear, one of my friends is back there, that we worked really very close with, Diane Crum. We started talking about what approach to take. And we decided it's great to do paper surveys, but to get in there and really start talking to people and finding out personally what their needs are, we decided then to do focus groups. And we got a group of very excited, involved people to work with us. And the two subdivisions, the North Subdivision and the Historic Goodyear Alliance, got together and we talked about what are their needs. First thing we did is to conceptualize what kind of neighborhood do you really want. Let's really dream. Little white picket fences, flowers on every corner, and we went there. And the second part of the meeting, we decided, okay, that's going a little too far. Let's now decide, what can we accomplish? What kind of goals can we set to really get things done? Not by having the city do it, not by having other people do it. What can we do together to achieve objectives? And we came up with some really great objectives. The first two were, first, both alliances decided they needed to get together their people and really mobilize them. So they decided to have their first, not the first, but a community picnics. And they did so at the two parks, Loma Linda and what's the name of the other park? Parque de Paz. And they were able to recruit a lot more people from the neighborhoods to get involved. So after we got together, we did another needs assessment on paper while people came to the picnics. We found that what they really needed is to work together. So out of the needs assessment, we also, it was recommended that people talk about their personal skills and what they could share with each other. So if you're an electrician, your neighbor's a carpenter, can we trade services? And so we did a survey, and that is working. So the other thing we've been doing is going out to all of the neighborhoods, the homeowners associations, to get them involved. And we have several that we're still negotiating so we could do more focus groups. In order to really get this information out, I'm really very excited that in the In Focus this month, we will have on, I'll tell you exactly, on page 5, the questionnaire, neighborhood needs questionnaire, and the story about what we have accomplished thus far. We still have a lot more to do and a lot more to accomplish with getting the HOAs involved, but I see that that's going to happen. Any questions?
Just a great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I attended one of those picnics, and they were very nice at La Paz. And
Oh, that's right.
Yes, and it was on, and they call you guys the dynamic duo. So we really appreciate all your effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Norma.
Thanks, Norma. Lastly, we have Sam DeBeese, who is also a VISTA member working in fire under the supervision of Tim Newbell. He's going to come up and say a few words about what he's been working on. Sam?
Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, thank you for having me. The last time I was at City Council, I spoke about a group called the CISCOR Council, and this is a volunteer body which serves two purposes. One is to hopefully strengthen the volunteer community within Goodyear, and the second was to provide access to federal grant funds from the federal government, obviously, for volunteer programs such as VIPS, Fire Corps, CERT, and Neighborhood Watch. Today, I'm just going to talk about the continuation of that process. Actually, on the consent portion of the agenda today will be the appointment of the members to the CISCOR Council, and should that pass, basically the next step, and we will start the process of actually meeting, getting the bylaws together, and we'll be officially prepared to apply for grants from the federal government and move forward on projects that the volunteer bodies in the city feel are necessary. And I believe that's probably the most important part of what I've done so far. So I thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you for the comments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Talking with our chiefs of both departments, PD and Fire, they believe the development and creation of these programs could not have been accomplished without our VISTA members. Kudos to our VISTA members for their outstanding effort and dedication to their projects and our community. Starting July 1, the VISTA project will be transferred to Hands On Greater Phoenix, which is a nonprofit organization that deals solely with working with other organizations to monitor and create jobs and find volunteers for the different positions. This is something that was under the direction and suggestion of the National and Community Service. The state office has asked us to do that, so we will be following over, and July 1st that'll happen. We will still have complete control of our projects, but now the supervisors will report directly to Hands On. In November, when the one-year service obligation is completed for our 3 members, we will move forward for 1 more year with 2 positions, and those 2 positions that were agreed to were Rose Beals and Norma Cunninghams. Are there any questions about the VISTA program or what happened to any of our members or myself?
Questions? Good job, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Like now, if John Fischbach, he would like to recognize elements of 2 of our organizations within Goodyear. John, if you take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first group that I'd like to recognize is our Fleet Division, and this is under the leadership of Richard Schweppe, who is our Fleet Management Superintendent. And let me address just a little bit. This program has 5 main goals. 1 is to identify outstanding operations for others to emulate. 2 is to provide recognition within the larger organization and the community that the winning fleets deserve. 3rd is promote pride in the industry and provide recognition within the national fleet community. 4th is to promote ever-increasing levels of productivity and operational effectiveness. 5th is to encourage more individuals to consider fleet operations as a career choice. We were selected, our fleet division was selected as one of the 100 best fleets in the country, and this is from competition. There are 38,000 fleets that are eligible for the award. The division was also recently awarded the Blue Seal of Excellence as a part of the recognition program for the National Institute of Automotive Excellence. In addition, both the Chief Police Citation for Excellence was awarded to the division for ongoing assistance and management of the police department's fleet needs. I'd like to introduce the fleet crew to you, and if you would stand up as I introduce your name. Richard Schweppe, who is our Fleet Management Superintendent. Mike Hewells, who is our Fleet Foreman. Beth Casillas, our Service Advisor. Phil Durbin, our Mechanic 3. Richard Landell, Mechanic 3. And Jerome Onstadt, Mechanic 3. And this division works under the direction and the support of Deputy Director of Public Works, Mark Flynn. I simply wanted to acknowledge their accomplishment and thank them for the tremendous work they do for the city. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now I'd like to address two of the people in our finance department, and I'd like the mayor to come down to present certificates to these individuals. First is Teresa Sims. This is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This award recognizes those governments that have succeeded in preparing a high-quality, comprehensive annual financial report, also known as the CAFR. And I notice some of our Citizens Budget Committee members here, they all know what CAFR means. So that's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Secondly, this recognition can be viewed as a very positive factor by credit rating agencies and by others interested in the professionalism of a government's finance operation. Third, this is the second time the city has received this award. And I want to thank Teresa, and she is the General Accounting Controller for the City of Goodyear, and her staff for their tremendous efforts. Thank you very much, Teresa. And then we have Terry Canada. This is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This award encourages state and local governments to prepare and issue budget documents of the highest quality. The top quality documents are essential for citizens and others with an interest in government's finances to be full and informed participants in the budget process. This is the 14th time that the city has received this award. Thank you, Terry, for all of the work that you do, and thank you on behalf of all the citizens. And while you're taking your seat, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, in conjunction with these awards, recognize the Finance Department for the recent upgrades to the city's GO bond ratings. The city's bonds are rated by two agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's Investors Service. Standard & Poor's upgraded the city's GO bonds from A+ to AA-, and Moody's upgraded them from A1 to AA2. Investors who buy municipal GO bonds rely on these ratings as a demonstration of the creditworthiness of the city. And this is an extremely excellent rating for a city of our size. Standard & Poor's stated that despite a challenging state and local budget environment, the upgrades reflect the agency's expectation that the city will maintain strong, unreserved fund balances in fiscal years 2010 and 2011. These upgrades further reflect their view of Goodyear's access to the diverse Phoenix economy, strong wealth indicators, and strong financial policies and practices. Congratulations to the Finance Department, Larry, and thank you to you and all of your staff for these accomplishments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And Terry Canada asked me if I would mention that some of those earlier awards that she received went to Joe Pizzillo. So, Joe, good job in the past.
Is that the same Joe Pizzillo?
Opportunity now for anyone in the public to address the council on any subject that is not on this evening's agenda. Would anyone like to comment on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, move to consent and ask the city clerk to read the items by title only, please.
Item A, approve draft minutes of a work session held on May 17, 2010. Item B, approve the appointment of 8 members to the Goodyear Citizen Core Council effective June 14, 2010. For the inaugural term, half of the council will serve 1 year and half of the council will serve 2 years. The term of the following 4 members will expire on June 13, 2011. Larry Atkinson, Olga Rodriguez, Sherry Davis, and Talmaj Tanks. The term of the remaining 4 members will expire on June 13, 2012. Rose Beals, Tanya Tanner, Nancy McFillin, and Janine Van Leeuwen. Thereafter, all members will serve for a term of 2 years. Item C, adopt ordinance 10-1218, amending the Goodyear City Code by amending Chapter 3, Article 3-1 of the Goodyear City Code by deleting the existing Section 3-1-5A4, Community Services, and combining Section 3-1-5A14, Public Works, and Water Resources as Public Works. Item D, approve revisions to a grant application for the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents relating to the application and subsequent grant offer. Item E, adopt Resolution 10-1381, approving and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement concerning roadway improvements adjacent to parcel 12.41 with NMP3, Estrella Mountain Ranch LLC, and NMP3, EMR4, relating to obligations to construct and/or contribute towards costs of constructing improvements for Cotton Lane, Elliott Road, and the intersection of Cotton Lane and Elliott Road, authorizing and directing the city manager to take all actions and execute all documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and the agreement, and providing for an effective date. Item F, adopt ordinance 10-1213, providing for an amendment to the planned area development pad zoning for Estrella Phase 1 parcels 12.37, 12.39, 12.40, and 12.41 on 51 acres generally located east of Estrella Parkway from the planned extension of Elliott Road on the north to the intersection of Estrella Parkway and San Miguel on the south, amending the planned area uses from townhome, 12 units per acre, multifamily, 20 units per acre, and church to single-family residential, 3.9 units per acre, and establishing residential densities and development standards as set forth in the Estrella Mountain Ranch Planned Area Development Amendment, parcels 12.37, 12.39, 12.40, and 12.41, dated March 3, 2010, adopting supplementary zoning map number 09-012 to provide for the pad zoning amendment, providing separability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone in the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Would anyone on council wish to remove an item from consent? Do I have a motion to approve consent items A through F, please?
So moved. Did I jump? Oh, I'm sorry. Please, go ahead.
We'll give you the second.
Second.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a motion from Councilmember Souza and a second from Vice Mayor Lord. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll now move to our business part of our agenda, and we're going to have a public hearing. It's going to be, the single public hearing will involve both the real property tax and then the moving from the tentative to the final budget. So we'll be getting a presentation from the city manager, and then we'll open it up for comments from the public. So I'm going to first off open the public hearing and ask Mr. Fischbach if he'd start the meeting off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As soon as the presentation, there it is, I'd like to address the proposed fiscal year 10 and 11 final budget and the tax levy this evening, the truth in taxation. I want to address also some conversations or comments that have been reported in the media and or conversations from our citizens. The items on the agenda this evening are a summary of the fiscal year 11 budget, employee compensation and benefits, property taxes and city sales taxes, fiscal year 11 revenues and expenditures, fiscal year 11 costs and one-time uses, and time for city council discussion and questions, and then action on the final budget. These are some of the comments that we've received that I hope to address this evening. The city's tax situation infers possible property tax increase next year, 14 extra firefighters, and the, quote, unnecessary overtime paid to firefighters. Third, Goodyear has the highest sales tax as compared to other West Valley cities. Fourth, Goodyear has more city employees per 1,000 residents than any other West Valley city. Fifth, employees enjoy very generous compensation packages, for example, 13 paid holidays, and if they took 2 furlough days, the city's budget would be relieved by $2 million. Next, over 33 employees have an income of over $100,000, which some citizens feel is overly generous. Next, the city manager is the highest paid city manager in the West Valley for a city size that is not comparable with other city manager salaries. Goodyear has one of the highest tax rates in the valley. Goodyear sales taxes are the second highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. The food and beverage tax is the highest in the valley. Construction sales tax is the third highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. Goodyear raised its fees to do business within the city in the past 2 months. Property tax is the fourth highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. Why are stadium personnel services doubling in the budget? What is the $200,000 increase for the mayor and the council's budget? When did we raise the restaurant tax to 4%? I'm sorry. And did Goodyear provide the week between Christmas and New Year's off with pay similar to Peoria? Before I do that, I want to address the process. We've been going at this process since October 19th, which was a work session with the City Council to review a financial forecast, and then dates going through today, June 14th, where we're holding the public hearing on the final budget and the tax levy, and then convening a special meeting to adopt the final budget. As recently as May 17th, I reviewed with the City Council the city's financial policies. These financial policies have basically 3 goals. 1, fiscal conservatism. Revenues from growth or development should be targeted to costs related to development. Secondly, flexibility. A long-range capital improvement plan should be prepared and updated each year. And third, best management practices. Ongoing maintenance costs should be financed through operating revenues rather than through bonds. The fiscal year 11 final budget, just in summary, totals approximately $255 million, which is a decrease of approximately 32% from the $375 million fiscal year 10 budget. It's important to note that $61 million of the total $255 million is only in the event of an improvement district, and there are no need or none contemplated at the present time. Third, the operating budget totals $70.8 million, which is a decrease of 2.8% from the $73 million fiscal year 10 operating budget. $2.2 million reduction is in personnel, which is basically 21 frozen positions, contractual services, and commodities. Fiscal year 11 capital improvement budget totals $25.2 million, which is a decrease of over 66% from the fiscal year 10 capital improvements plan of $74.8 million. The proposed, but the CIP for next year, for fiscal year 12, will be much smaller, and that will be in the neighborhood of $7.9 million. The fiscal year 11 budget, however, does fund all core services for the city. And we incorporated the work of the Citizens Budget Committee, which was very helpful, and they submitted 27 budget recommendations to the City Council, and we were able to be responsive, and within 11 days incorporated 12 of those items into the fiscal year 11 budget, and the other 15 are being assigned for further review, cost-benefit analyses, legal analysis, and we're working on them right now as I speak. The fiscal year 11 final budget has no new debt to the general fund, which was a recommendation of the Citizens Budget Committee. There is a water interconnect project, which is the Adaman project as we refer to provide additional supply, and that will require debt service, but that is coming from the water utility fund. The final budget ensures the city's fiscal stability, and as I mentioned earlier, the city's general obligation bonds have been upgraded from A+ to A- or AA-, and that's Standard & Poor's rating, and from A1 to AA2, which is Moody's rating. Larry Given, our financial analyst, estimates that that is equal to 30 basis points, or 0.3% in the marketplace. So just as an example, on a $40 million bond for a 20-year period, that would result in savings to the city of $800,000. So it is a significant achievement. The fiscal year 11 final budget also takes care of public safety initiatives, both the 911 communications facility and technology improvements. Quality of life is addressed through parks and recreation programs and historic Goodyear Park improvements. And priority projects are taken care of in the telephone system upgrades, the Public Works corporate yard, and the 157th Avenue Master Plan. Employee compensation and benefits. Let me address this for a moment. The fiscal year 11 final budget reduces employee compensation and benefits. There is no merit nor market increases to salaries. This is the third year without a merit increase incorporated into the budget for the employees, and it's the second year without a market adjustment incorporated into the budget. The no merit increase saves the city approximately $1 million each of the years that it's been done, and the no market increase saves the city approximately $107,000 in each of the 2 years, each year. Furthermore, we're reducing the employee benefits. We've suspended longevity pay, which is $104,000. We're recommending that the health retirement savings account be suspended. That's $190,000. We are recommending that the vacation cash-in program be suspended. It's $116,000. We're suspending the criteria-based promotion program, which is $126,000. We're continuing to suspend the tuition reimbursement program, which is $140,000. And we're keeping the reduction to the uniform allowances in the fire department, which they generously came forward and offered to the city on their own, and that saves us $92,000. And the additional ongoing costs that the city employees are incurring, our health insurance, we have increased the employees' contributions by 25%, and that's towards the payment of the $5.1 million health care premium. This is a comparison of other cities and their compensation programs on a tuition reimbursement basis, a longevity pay program, comprehensive above or compensation above regular for working hours, for working on holidays, and vacation cash-in. You'll note that it's all over the place for the different cities. The city of Goodyear, I guess unfortunately or fortunately, depend how you look at it, is the only employer that has taken away all of these programs, and the other cities are at the status that they are in right now. This is a comparison of the furloughs implemented in 2009-2010. And the only cities that did implement furloughs were Glendale, Phoenix did a voluntary program, and Yuma also did it. As you can see, most of the cities have not done furloughs as of December, but we will check on this as once the budgets are approved and follow up on it in the future with the City Council. One of the comments made was that if the city took 2 furlough days, we'd save $2 million. So we did some calculations and found that $132,872 is all that the city would save for an 8-hour furlough day of all employees. And so that means we would take 15 days to do $2 million or 3 work weeks. Paid holidays provided compared to other cities. We have 10 holidays in Avondale, Chandler, Peoria, and Scottsdale, 11 holidays in Goodyear, Tempe, Surprise, and Gilbert, 11 and a half in Glendale, 12 in Buckeye, and 10 and a half in Phoenix. Employees' base salary. It's been commented that 33 employees make over $100,000. That is correct. But one must keep that in perspective. I am very proud of the workforce that we have with the City of Goodyear, and as I will note in a moment, our salaries are at 92% of the market. So quite frankly, the salaries comparison are pretty good from the City of Goodyear's standpoint. These employees are responsible for major operations within the city, whether it's a police department, a water utility, a public works function, whatever. They are responsible for millions of dollars of operations and for the lives and safety of many of our residents. And so the salaries paid are quite justifiable. As I mentioned, I'm very proud of the employees. They are indeed our most valuable asset. They're our greatest asset that the city has. We have approximately 510 employees servicing the needs for the city. It used to almost be 600 employees. We have cut 3 directors since I've been here in 2 years. That's 3 people who made in excess of $100,000. Matrix said we should add 1 additional employee, and I have not done that. So we've had a net or a positive swing of 4 people from the Matrix report. This shows the Goodyear salary comparison for the 10 benchmark cities that were approved by the City Council in 2007. It shows that the exempt positions are at 93% of the salary. Non-exempt positions are 91%. Fire positions are at 96%. Police at 89%. And the total city employees on average are at 92% of the average of the area. This addresses the question of the city manager being the highest paid city manager. I've heard it from both ways, both in the Phoenix area and in the West Valley. Both of them are ridiculously untrue. Goodyear's salary is $168,000 for the city manager, total compensation of $189,600, which includes $16,800 of deferred compensation, which is a retirement program, and the annual car allowance of $400 a month, not $800 as has been reported by some people, for a total of $4,800 on an annual basis. The average salary of these 10 cities for city manager, total compensation, is $221,120. The median salary or total compensation is $210,160. On the West Valley, if we did just those cities, we're at 88% of what the other managers are at. And we're at, if that's for the average, we're at 90% for the median. Employees per thousand population based on the 10 cities that we compare ourselves to. And as you'll see, Gilbert's 5.55, Avondale 5.93, Buckeye 6.48, Chandler 6.53, and the rest of the cities with the asterisk are cities that have ballparks. Surprise 7.03, Peoria 7.43, Goodyear 7.82, that includes the 27 people at the ballpark. Glendale 7.96, they have a ballpark, but they do not have any staff at the ballpark because the teams manage that operation. Scottsdale 9.84, Phoenix 10.33, and Tempe 10.65. This is from employee information that was collected from the 10 survey cities between March 1st and March 29th of this year, and these were the results. It's very difficult to compare cities on this basis. One has to take into account the demographics of the city, the geographic size of the city, the complexity of the services of the city. For example, do you contract for services or do you provide the service? Avondale, for example, does not provide any park maintenance service or right-of-way maintenance, and that changes the number of employees dramatically. We have a ballpark, as I mentioned, that's 27 additional employees. We also have, from a geographic size, something that is, Avondale has 44 square miles. The city of Goodyear has 83 square miles within a developed or developing area, and has 190 square miles after the 2007 annexation. Our planning area has 246 square miles. It makes a difference when you try to compare these cities, and it's a very difficult thing to do. What is significant, however, if you look at this next slide, we have gone from 1997, 1998, from 12.45 employees per thousand down to the present 7.82 per thousand. That is a 4.63 employees per thousand decrease, or a 37.2% decrease. And quite frankly, I'm pretty proud of that. That is something that has been accomplished even in the face of tremendous growth. And as speaking of growth, we are still growing today. You'll see the populations here and the number of employees. If you look at fiscal year 7, we had 55,900 people, 66 employees. In 08, we had 59,526 people and 580 employees. In 09, 593 employees, servicing 62,554 employees. And then currently, the current budget is 514 employees, servicing 64,554 population. Let me address taxes for a moment. This is an ad that we have placed in the paper 3 times during this past week, announcing tonight's public hearing, trying to make it clear this is not a legal ad, this is a layman's ad, trying to make it clear that the taxes were not going up. There is no tax increase incorporated into the budget proposal before you this evening. As a matter of fact, you'll see in this particular ad that tax year 2009, the primary tax, a home that was assessed at $208,800, which was the average home in Goodyear, and this year in 2010, the amount or the assessed value went down to $152,700. The taxes are going from $334 on that same house to $244 this next year. So that is what's happening with the property taxes for the city of Goodyear. The city of Goodyear's primary and secondary property tax rate, including the voter-approved debt service, will remain at $1.60 per hundred of assessed value for the 6th straight year. The change in property taxes, the primary portion of the property tax, is increasing by 4%. However, the rate for the secondary portion of the property tax is going down, which offsets that increase, and thus we maintain the same $1.60. So generally speaking, we can't promise anything because some people's assessed value went up, but generally speaking, property taxes for the city will go down in Goodyear on most people's homes. The Truth in Taxation advertisement went on to say that basically the property tax increase is $236,047. That's the portion that we are required by law to advertise in the newspaper, and that's the portion that the primary tax increase is taking place. And this again shows the assessed value going down 26% from $208,800 to the $152,700, and that the average city property tax is going from $334 for the city's portion to $244. Let me talk for a moment about the history of the council taxation policies. In 1987, the city established the 2% general sales tax rate for all classifications. It also established the transient lodging, dining, and beverage, so TLDB is what it's referred to, tax. The TLDB was added to the 2% tax on the hotels, restaurants, and bars. So the total 4% hotel, restaurant, and bar tax rate was created at that time. In 1995, we established the two-tier tax for single item purchases greater than $2,000. And that was from 2%, we changed that to 1.2% for those items in excess of $2,000. Fast forward to 2001, we removed the 2% TLD&B tax to conform to the model tax code. However, we did not remove it. We just transferred it, and the council decided to retain the total tax rate, and so the total 4% hotel, restaurant, and bar tax rate was made as a general sales tax of 4%. In 2005, the Tax Policy Task Force appointed by the City Council recommended, and the Council did the reduced the combined property tax rate, this is per $100 of assessed value, from $2.10 to $1.60. And the committee recommended maintaining the 2% general sales and food tax rate, maintained the 4% restaurant and bar rate, increased the hotel tax from 4% to 4.5%, maintained the single item purchase tax rate at 1.2%, and increased the single purchase amount limit from $2,000 to $5,000. And they increased the construction sales tax rate from 2% to 3.5%. Then fast forward to last year, and the council approved an increase in the general sales tax rate from 2 to 2.5%. And this was the tax increase that we came to you and recommended that it was necessary in order to make it through this difficult period of time. And you approved it subject to it being reviewed in 3 years or less, which we are committed to keeping that promise. We increased the total hotel tax rate from 4.5% to 5%. We reduced the number of rental units for taxation from 3 or more to 2 or more. We established a use tax for purchases made outside of the state or in unincorporated areas, and we maintained the single item purchase limit tax rate of 1.2% for all items that cost greater than $5,000. The general sales tax rate is shown here. Litchfield Park is the highest at 2.8%. Assuming that the Buckeye City Council votes favorably tonight, they will get that enviable spot of being number one, because they're considering a 3% sales tax tonight at their city council meeting. Then comes Avondale and Goodyear, both at 2.5%, and Tolleson at 2.5%. Then Glendale, Surprise at 2.2%. Buckeye right now is at 2%. Phoenix at 2%, Tempe 2%, and so on, down to Gilbert being at 1.5%. The sales tax ranking in the metropolitan Phoenix area, we're tied at second at the moment. Probably tomorrow we'll be tied for third. Overall rank in the state, out of 95 cities, we're 32nd. Restaurants, we're number one in the Phoenix area. There's no argument with that. Overall, in the state, there are 5 that are higher. We're 6th in that category. Contracting tax, we're third in the metro area, and in the state, we're 22nd. Lodging tax, we're 9th in the metro area, and we're 31st in the state. This shows the restaurants and what the 4% tax generates, and it's through April 10th. It generates $3.4 million, and that's 13.3% of the total. The retail generates $9.59 million, and that's 37.5% of the total. And the hotel tax generates $660,000, or 2.5% of the total. The restaurants, as I noted already, has had no increase since the early 90s. And this year, it's interesting to note that it's on the path to topping $4.3 million, which is an increase of 28.3% from last year. So arguing that the 4% tax is inhibiting people from spending on their food taxes or food choices in the city of Goodyear is not true. If we were to reduce the food tax by 0.5%, from 4% to 3.5%, it would be $527,000 estimated that it would save, or that it would cost the city. Several things that we are incorporating into a council workshop for this fall are the discussion of lowering the restaurant tax, adjusting the contractor's tax, revisiting the 2012 commitment or earlier to make the sales tax go down or back to where it was, and the idea of changing the property tax to a floating rate, so to speak, which is what the CBC committee recommended. And those are the things we're looking at right now for a workshop shortly after your vacation. If there's other things identified, we'd be happy to put them on the agenda also to discuss them at that time. This is a chart that you've seen before. It summarizes, I'm sorry for the size of it, but it summarizes all the tax policies of the city and all the other cities in comparison. And it shows you that we are higher in some categories and lower in some others. The city of Goodyear is highlighted in gold or yellow, depending on your color perception. Fiscal year 11 budget revenues and expenditures summary. Where the money comes from. We have a proposed ID, that's the $61 million I shared with you. We have no proposal, we have no plans for one, but we have to put it in the budget if, in case something comes up, that you can spend the money, because if it wasn't in the budget, you couldn't spend the money under state law. Development impact fees represent $7.3 million, or 3%. Intergovernmental, $12.2 million, or 5%. Rainy Day Fund, which is the unreserved fund balance, $16.3 million, 6%. Taxes and surcharges, $56.3 million, 22%. User fees, $24.7 million, 10%. Grants, $17.2 million, 7%. Bonds, $2 million, 1%, and that's for the water utility that I mentioned. And the fund balance, $57.8 million, or 23%. Where the money goes, it starts with the contingency fund of $61.8 million, or 24%. Rainy Day Fund of $16.3 million, which is 6%. The fiscal year 11 CIP, the Capital Improvements Program, $25.2 million, or 10%. Carryover capital and one-time $56.5 million, 22%. Debt service $24.1 million, 9%. And the operating budget of $70.8 million, or 29%. The operating expenditures by department Let's start with the orange. Public Works, 18.7 million, 27%. Information Technology, 2.4 million, 3%. Community Development, 1.07 million, 2%. Human Resources, 2.1 million, 3%. Engineering, 2.6, 3%. Finance, 2.6, 4%. Stadium, 3.6 million, 5%. Parks and Rec, 2.6, 4%. Non-departmental, 2.8 million, 4%. Police, 13.6 million, 20%. And fire, 11.3 million, 16%. And all other, 5.9 million, 9%. As you'll note, Public Works, Fire, and Police account for 63% of the total budget of the city of Goodyear. The Capital Improvement Program, as I mentioned, is $25.2 million, and that's non-utility impact fees, $12.7 million, or 51% of the entire budget is based on impact fees. These are fees that developers pay to the city at the time of development, the time of pulling a building permit, or the time of completing a commercial building, and they have to pay impact fees to the city to, in effect, buy their way into the city's programs and services. Grants represent $957,000, or 4%. Utility impact fees, again, impact fees are those fees that people have to pay at the time a building permit is issued. They have to pay into the city's utility account. Total $6.4 million, 25%. And the general fund is $5.1 million, or 20%. The Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 11 is represented by wastewater projects, $2.9 million, art projects, $79,000, public safety projects, $5.5 million, parks projects, $257,000, facility projects, $5.6 million, street projects, $3.9 million, technology projects, $1.5 million, and water projects of $5.5 million. The new costs and one-time uses incorporated into this proposed budget include the Park and Ride operating cost that's presently under construction of $60,000, and this is basically for a half a year that we anticipate it being completed. Health insurance, $400,000. Increasing water costs for parks, this is due to anticipated rate increases from Liberty and the City of Goodyear, $300,000. This is for right-of-ways and things like that, the ballpark. Elections costs, we have 2 elections budgeted at $65,000, which were not necessary this last year, and that's $130,000. Additional building inspector position, as you know, and I've reported several times over the past few months, we did add a building inspector this past year because of a spike in development, and that is costing us $66,000. And then the telephone system operating costs of $60,000 for the total budget additions of $1 million. The budget initiatives and the one-time uses include the purchase of the APS streetlights, $400,000, fleet replacement, $1.5 million, insurance reserve, $500,000 for the total one-time use of $2.4 million. I'd like to provide some additional detail about the streetlight purchase and the fleet and equipment reserve. The Matrix Group conducted a management assessment that was commissioned by the City Council in 2007. The Matrix study identified the purchase of the streetlight system as the best management practice and recommended that the city do it. The city hired DH Lighting Solutions, which conducted a cost-benefit analysis and determined that there could be substantial operating savings to the city, cost savings. Estimated payback at the time of the study was 2.86 years. Since that time, that has come down to 22 months is the estimated payback period for the purchase of the streetlights. We presented and reviewed this with the City Council in July of 2008. The purchase price is the $420,000. The annual cost for APS owned and maintained system is $1.26 million. Annual cost for city-owned system is $1.01 million, which generates a savings of $245,000. And again, the estimated payback or the time needed to recoup that investment is 22 months, which makes a very reasonable, sound investment, and it's recommended that the city do this. If the city decides not to do this, we would have to amend our budget and add back in the $245,000 that we're projecting in savings. On the fleet maintenance, we have today 318 vehicles in our city fleet. The total value of the fleet, and this is based on acquisition costs, is $18.7 million. And that's $15.1 million in the general fund and $3.6 million in the enterprise fund. In the fiscal year 11 budget, we have recommended $1.5 million replacement reserve as one of the items in the budget. This represents 6% of our total value of the fleet. 1.1 million of that 1.5 million is recommended for vehicle replacement, and 400,000 is for the seeding of a reserve fund. The way we replace vehicles, and we haven't done this in 2 years now, we use a scoring system used to determine the vehicle replacement. Citing age, conditions are determined. At a certain point, it's obvious replacement costs more than, it's more cost effective than maintaining the vehicle. For example, a 2002 police vehicle that we have is 4 times the maintenance costs per mile compared to our 2007 police vehicle. And basically that's 95 cents a mile for the 2002 vehicle or 24 cents a mile for the 2007 vehicle. And as I mentioned, the budget incorporates approximately 6% of the total value of the fleet as a replacement reserve. Fiscal year 11 replacement will be primarily emergency vehicles. What is the mileage of the emergency vehicles at the time of replacements? Based on our recent activities, they would be about 75 to 105,000 miles. What's important to recognize, though, is that in a police vehicle, you have to almost double the time that the engine is running because of the idling time that they have to go through. So you're talking about vehicles that have 150,000 to 210,000 miles on them. Police vehicles last purchased, we haven't purchased any in 2009, 2010. We purchased 5 because of the street crimes unit that we created in 2008 and 2009, and then 23 vehicles in 8 replacement and 15 new in 2007, 2008. The reserve is a portion of the budget. As I mentioned, the $400,000 is to go into a reserve. The reserve is one method of financing that allows organizations to spread out capital costs. It's the establishment of an internal fund chargeback system. And that's what we're moving towards. It's a good best business practice, and we need to get there. It's easier to budget smaller amounts annually rather than a one-time large amount. And the downside is that it's costly to establish, as we're seeing this year. Police take-home vehicles, 124 of our vehicles are in the police department. 75 or 58% participate in the take-home program. 52 vehicles do not qualify for the take-home program, and that's because they're specialty units, the Bear command vans, speed trailers, undercover cars, code enforcement trucks, and so forth. And As noted on the slide, the department has found that it's less expensive to extend the life of a vehicle. It can extend the life of the vehicle by having the take-home policy. The goals of the take-home program are A, to extend the life of the vehicle, accountability in maintaining the vehicles, and police vehicle presence in the neighborhoods and community. And this cannot be understated enough. We have a significant presence in the community by the very amount of police cars that we have on the street. Nobody knows that they aren't working, but they are seeing additional police cars on the street. We have one of the safest communities in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and quite frankly, we attribute a large part of this to our take-home program. We get 2 years additional life out of each of the vehicles. We attribute this to the fact that we have the take-home program. I had this type of program in the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, where we had 164 police cars, and it was we did a cost-benefit analysis, and it proved that it was far more beneficial and cost-effective to maintain these take-home vehicles than it is to have them assigned to 2 shifts, for example. And quite frankly, it removes a problem in that we don't have a place where we lock up and store the vehicles when they aren't working. Fire department overtime. Scheduled overtime. We have 2 types of overtime. Scheduled overtime, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act. There is no way around this. It's overtime that we must pay per the Fair Labor Standards Act as the federal government requires. And this occurs twice in a 6-week pay period. So twice in that 6-week pay period, firefighters work 106 hours, and therefore they have, I forget the number, but it's a built-in amount of overtime. Then the other type of overtime, and this one is within our control, is constant staffing. And this is managed on a daily basis by the shift battalion chief. The types of constant staffing include special training, or spring training. So if you have somebody doing spring training, we always have to have 4 men per truck, and that's a requirement from the automatic aid program that we're in the city of Phoenix and the Phoenix metropolitan area. You are required to have 4 men on each vehicle. So if a man is sick, or a man or a woman is sick, you cannot just, go short that week, go short that day with 3 people on the truck. You have to replace that person. Over the last year, we have been able to dramatically decrease the use of constant staffing, in a large part due to the city's closing of Fire Station 187, which is the Sonoran Valley Station. As you'll recall, we hired 14 people to man that station. At the time, the city was anticipating Montage to proceed with the development, and that did not occur. And as you know, we negotiated a deal with Maricopa, the city of Maricopa, to where they are providing fire protection, and we moved our 14 people back up to the main part of Goodyear. This chart shows what we have done with those overtime costs, and we've reduced them by approximately $520,000 from that action of using those 14 people. And as I mentioned, this is primarily as a result of using those people. This chart shows both the constant staffing in the top of the bar chart, those colors are pretty close to each other, and scheduled overtime in the bottom of the bar chart. And it shows, again, the tremendous decrease that we've been able to achieve in the overtime that is being paid by the city. This chart shows the cost per employee, and the big gap between the 84 employees on the last fiscal year 9 and 10 column is the savings that we're achieving this year from the overtime. Let me conclude by again reviewing those questions that I presented at the beginning. This time it'll be more of a statement. The city's tax situation does not include a property tax increase next year. The additional 14 firefighters have helped reduce the cost of constant staffing to the city. Goodyear has the second highest sales tax as compared to other West Valley cities, until Buckeye takes their action. Goodyear does not have more city employees per 1,000 residents than any other West Valley city. Employees are offered fair and competitive compensation packages, and it would require more than 2 furlough days to achieve the $2 million in savings. 33 employees do have an income in excess of $100,000. The city manager is not the highest paid city manager in the West Valley nor the Valley. Goodyear has one of the highest tax rates in the Valley. Goodyear sales taxes are the second highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. The food and beverage tax is the highest in the Valley. The construction sales tax is the third highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. Goodyear raised its fees to do business within the city in the past 2 months. And this was a recommendation of the Citizens Budget Committee. Property tax is the fourth highest in comparison to 14 neighboring cities. Stadium personnel services increased in the budget as a result of adding a second team. The increase in the mayor and council budget for fiscal year 11 reflects an accounting transfer for personnel to better reflect the cost of doing business. The restaurant tax was increased to 4% in 1991. Goodyear provided 2 days off with pay, the day after Christmas and the day after New Year's, in fiscal year 9 and 10 in lieu of market and merit adjustments. The city of Peoria provided 4 days off with pay the week between Christmas and New Year's in fiscal year 10. The actions to be taken tonight are holding the public hearing on the tax levy and the final budget adoption, approving the truth in taxation. That's a roll call vote. It's not adopted, it's just approved, and it's the $236,047 figure that I referenced earlier, and adopt a resolution approving the final budget. Where do we go from here is the July 12th meeting. We will have an adoption of the tax levy for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll continue with the public hearing, and it's now time for the public to speak. I think the public would probably like to get out of their chairs and walk around for a bit, so we're going to do that. How many speakers do we have?
Oh, my God.
12.
12, okay. All right, well, took a little while longer than we thought for the initial presentation, but I think we're ready now for the public. But I think it'd be good to take a quick break. Why don't we meet again at 7:30 by that clock, okay? If we take our seats, we'll get underway. We'll now move to the part of the public hearing where the public speaks, addresses its concerns to council. And I believe we have 10 people that would like to speak. Just to start that off, I'd like to ask you if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes, and believe me, everybody in the audience would appreciate it if you do. And so don't ask me, or don't require me to ask you to stop, please. Just try to get done within the 3 minutes. And those 3 minutes will start after you've introduced yourself and provided your address, okay? And then the 3 minutes will be underway. And then we're looking forward to hearing from all of you. So, ready to go?
Yes. First speaker is Roger Matlin.
Good evening, Council. My name is Roger Matlin, Goodyear, Arizona, and I appreciate you calling me first. I didn't expect that. I was hoping you were going to hold me for last. I'm up here today, actually, and first I want to put something on the Elmo. Do I put it correctly like this, up
Turn it.
for presentation?
Yeah, that's good.
Good.
Okay. I just wanted to, first confirm, is this a publication from the City of Goodyear?
It's provided by the city of Goodyear. It is not the formal notification of the change in taxes. It is an explanation, because some people interpreted the formal notification as an increase in taxes. It was an increase in the primary, but a decrease in the secondary, resulting in the continuation of the $1.60. And this explains that.
Okay, because my concern actually comes about from this notification. And as you'll see, I've got an arrow pointing to one part of it that notes that the tax year 2010 is 09/10, and then it shows a secondary tax rate, which plays into the combined total rate, that indicates that the city's taxes overall would not be $1.60 per 100 of assessed value, but in fact would be $9.16 per $100 of assessed value. So over concerns about the truth in taxation laws, I contacted the state of Arizona to ask them about that, and they referred me to the ARS 4217107, paragraph A, section 6, which indicates that the truth in taxation statements have to be made prior to you adopting the budget, which you were planning on doing tonight. The only problem is this statement, which was also presented earlier in City Manager Fishbach's presentation, brings into question whether or not the truth in taxation statements that have been presented by the City of Goodyear are indeed valid. And according to the state of Arizona, that means that the city's truth in taxation statements are in question, and because it is a significant difference in the overall tax rate and in these statements, that you would not be allowed to actually vote on this tonight and approve the truth in taxation statements as well as the city's budget. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Like I said, I contacted the state of Arizona. I spoke to them about it just to make sure that I wasn't trying to say something that didn't match up. But, I did go through and I tried to contact Larry Lang on Friday to notify him of this. But this is a very significant difference in what you have in the truth and taxation statements that you've issued. And therefore, it brings into question the validity of those statements, and therefore would not be considered valid by the state of Arizona. So I just ask that you delay the vote on the truth and taxation, as well as the second item, which is the city budget, until the statements have been properly reissued under state law.
Thank you. You're raising a very serious issue, and I think, Larry, can you respond to that now rather than proceeding?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll respond to that one. I couldn't read the screen either, but the truth in taxation is the legal notice, and that is the one that shows the primary property tax. There's a decimal error on this one for the cents. I agree that there is a decimal error on this schedule that we published. Yes, the secondary rate, where it's showing 0.8397, and the primary rate shows 0.07603. But on the publication that was sent in the primary, which is the required disclosure in publication, that publication was correct and did have those correct rates in. We are required by law, after this hearing tonight, we send all of that documentation to the state of Arizona, and they confirm that as we move forward and before the levy is actually accepted at the county level.
Could you just tell us what is the correct number?
It's 0.7603 is the primary rate. And the secondary rate is 0.8397, and those two add up to the $1.60.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're legal.
Next speaker is Charlotte Kafitz.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Kafitz, and I reside at 14971 West Pinchot Avenue, and I'm really Gary Gelser tonight. I'm going to read you a letter from Gary because he couldn't be here. To the mayor, vice mayor, and council members, I am on the East Coast for some family business and will not be present to voice my support of the proposed city budget. I think you will be very pleased. You should be very pleased with the budget that the city manager is proposing. He was able to accomplish balancing the budget without drastically reducing staff and the services that the citizens expect. If you thought that the Citizens Budget Committee was going to discover a magic bullet, you were mistaken. During the 4+ months of its existence, the Citizens Budget Committee consumed more than 5,000 hours of staff time. Since the average city employee costs $30 an hour, this was more than $150,000 of employee staff time that could have been used in a more productive way. Think of this as 3 new police cars. The Citizens Budget Committee discovered no new ways to save city money that had not already been initiated by the staff during the past year. Many of the suggestions had already been incorporated into this year's budget. A further comment on the 25 or more suggestions out of the committee. There were 26 members on the committee. The top 2 suggestions got approximately 15 votes apiece. Not what I would call a resounding majority. Many of the suggestions got only 1 or 2 votes, and yet they are being considered as if they had the support of the entire committee. They did not have the support of all the majority, and the members of the committee did not support all of the recommendations. If you reject the budget, then you will probably need to start looking for new senior staff and city manager, since this will be a repudiation of their work over the last several years. I continually hear from the council how great our staff are. Well, now is the time to put our tax money to work supporting this fine staff. I really wish I could be in Goodyear on Monday night, but I will be back for the final votes before the council goes on vacation. Leave on your vacation knowing you did right by the citizens, pass the proposed budget. Do not put Goodyear on the path to being a second-class city. Gary Gelser. And I'll add my 2 cents worth in terms of staff. Before I retired, I had a budget or a working budget of $50 million, and I made more than the city manager makes. So it's not an out of line of salary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Barbara Julian.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening. I don't like doing this.
Tough.
I'm here to question your general fund. I noticed that it is increased significantly. The rest of the budget was decreased. I'd like to know why you increased the general fund, which you have control over, and what that extra money will be used for. I do live in Goodyear and Merrill.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the
I live in Goodyear and Merrill, on Merrill Street.
Okay. we will respond to that after the others have spoken. Is that all right with you?
That's fine.
And it's, obviously, that's a broad question.
Yes, it
But
is.
it's a very good question. So we will get to that.
Al Osorio.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Al Osorio, 10926 South Oakwood Drive. I'm a citizen of Goodyear, previously of Scottsdale, Avondale, of course, New York. Members of my family first came here in Arizona in the 1960s, and many of those present know of me from my service at Goodyear on 4 of the 12 sections of the city: Parks and Recreation, Police, Fire, and Public Works.
And do me a favor, move that microphone.
Need more time.
Please? Yeah. Good.
You want me to start over?
That's
Having a hard time.
I might add that last Thursday, as part of the Brownsfield project, I helped inch along the progress of the city center. I also was part of 2 water rate committees realizing the importance of water in the desert and that the previous schedules were antiquated, and I supported rate increases. As a member of the Citizen Budget Committee, of which 6 came from the Strela region, I believe we filled the mission. Now I ask you to meet your citizens' needs in this challenging economic times by voting against the budget. I had the good fortune of serving with some of the most dedicated, hardworking municipal employees that I've ever known. These difficult economic times will pass. Yes, I know what pay freezes are, what furloughs are, and in the 1990s I experienced them as a teachers union official in New York. I was told dozens of times how lucky members were to have work. But bad times sometimes bring good things. It was back then that I first began my first business in telemarketing. Today I'm on my 4th business. This is proof. I've been working a business here, which is one of 2,300 companies supporting the 2nd largest company in the world, Apple Computer. We specialize in e-books. Oddly, I don't have an iPad. My daughters, who are ASU graduates, do. But as an owner, I cut expenses. While personally I want a device, as a business owner, I don't see the need for us. For 4 years, I have reduced the cost per unit from $30, then to $4, to now 50 cents. That's budget cutting. Better, I still maintain the same profit margin thanks to the internet. I'm a member of the Estrella Business Network, and these are its members. My retail shop is on the internet, its server, in some place in California I have never been. However, others here in Goodyear, other businesses do not have the fortune of having their overhead reduced the way I have. So I leave you with this. In 1775, the businesses petitioned the Crown in London over tax collections. Their protest gave birth to this republic. Those stripes upon which our country flag is designed came from early American sea flags, all bearing merchant ships. And so therefore, I wish that you consider such things as our industry here, our businesses here. And finally, this statistic about restaurants, which I just heard, are you including Sonic's, Burger King, and McDonald's? If that's part of your restaurants here in Goodyear, they don't compare to the Royal Palm or the Phoenician in Scottsdale. If businesses are flourishing in the restaurant industry, it's probably the fast food industry, and not businesses which are giving another kind of food. I'm sorry. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Green. Tim Riley from Michael Green.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Michael Green lives in Goodyear, Arizona, and he was unable to attend. He asked that I read a statement into the record. Excuse me, I put my glasses on. Dear members of the council, I deeply regret not being able to address you directly, but fortunately I am on a business travel. My family moved to Goodyear less than 2 years ago. Our experiences within the community thus far have been outstanding, as we have met more people and made more friends in the 2 years than in the 10 years we spent in Virginia. We believe we have found a place where we can plant our roots and integrate ourselves into its culture and economic fabric. However, this is not the case. I am currently a defense contractor and I've done very well within this industry, but it is not my life's calling. It is in my heart to do something greater, to work with my neighbors and friends and begin ventures that will truly make a difference in our lives. I'm a young man with goals, ambitions, drive, and an overwhelming desire to make this world a better place. This economic downturn has provided our demographic an opportunity to localize, to produce goods and services at the municipal level, to once again allow the lone entrepreneurs the chance to flourish. They're out there with big ideas just waiting to bring bright light to the world. This is why I find it so disheartening to learn that my local government does not share the same sentiments as I do. Rather than be fiscally responsible leaders and produce a budget that is conducive to these times, you have the irrational delusions that our economy will soon have unlimited growth. How can you rationalize that by shifting the burden of your encumbrance onto the shoulders of the taxpayers, that this will not have consequences? You are public servants. You must make the hard decisions unless you are truly blind to the plight around you. Are you so far removed that you don't see the glut of empty retail spaces, the thousands of stagnating foreclosure? How about the numbers of taxpayers losing their jobs? I know program managers that manage hundreds of millions of dollars with a fraction of the overhead the city of Goodyear has. Gold-plated public positions have to end, and municipal government once again reflect the health of its locale. Governments do not create anything. They can only take. And when they take too much, innovators and opportunities will go elsewhere. With successive taxes and fees coupled with a bloated bureaucracy, what incentive is there for me to stay in Goodyear? When my time comes and I give life to my ideas and ambitions, why would I do it here? When ahead of me is a litany of roadblocks and financial hindrances. By levying additional hardships, you magnify disincentives to the very thing that pays your salaries and allows you to be your tax base. It's time for the council to be the leaders you were elected to be. Remove your excess fees and taxes so the small businessman can generate wealth rather than just scrape by or face the possibility of not having anything left to tax. If you wish to know your future, just look to the west and you see all you need to see. Thank you sincerely, Michael Green.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Cassandra McCory.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Cassandra McCory.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Cassandra McCory, and I live at 18444 West Sunrise Drive, Goodyear, Arizona. And I'm here in support.
The mic down a little bit.
I'm here in support of the current proposed budget. I do believe that the city's done a good job taking a look at the budget and balancing it, and they've been able to come up with a good budget. And I don't see any unnecessary pays as far as salary goes. I mean, it was proven up there that it's comparable. It's right there in the middle. It's not toward the absolute top. And a lot of times, you know, you get what you pay for. And this is a well-run city. I just moved to this city within the past year, and I did research and moved to this city for a reason, because it looked like a safe, well-run city, and I'd like to keep it that way. And I think that when you start reducing the overhead, that you start getting what you pay for, and maybe people might leave and go somewhere else. And I have a concern about I've been hearing, I know they posted on the board that they had 14 extra firefighters, but this helped cut the overtime budget. But I've heard rumors of them wanting to cut these firefighter positions, and that concerns me because it concerns me for my own safety, the safety of my community, and my family. I would not like to see a decrease in public safety services. And I also know that we have the Litchfield Park agreement, in which is a $500,000, increase to the budget that's going to be going in there. So I think these extra firefighters need to stay if that was something that may be looking at being cut. And I guess tonight they were talking about, taking a look at from when they raised the taxes to lowering it again and taking a look at that. I don't think right now where things stand that it's a good idea to take a look at lowering our taxes right now until the economy starts to pick up, and then we can. I mean, we would all like to have lower tax rates, but you look at Prop 100, people are concerned about public services, and the whole state showed that with Prop 100. They're concerned about the schools and their public safety. And so I would just like to conclude by saying that I'm in support of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Susie Sandwick.
Is there a problem?
I was part of 4 people, and we had somebody else. We would like to go first. That'd be okay, Sean Adams?
Okay, yours was on top of the 4. Sean Adams.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Sean Adams, 11033 South Abysso Drive in Goodyear. I'm a currently unemployed professional with over 33 years experience in the housing industry. I was a manager that had to make very humbling personnel cuts and balance our budget, and then ended up being a victim of a second wave of cuts so that the company might survive. Needless to say, I have to live within my means. So with that said, I am pleased to stand here in front of you today as the first of 4 interconnected presentations representing 340 people, 23 emails of Goodyear residents and business owners who have signed petitions opposing the tentative budget approved 3 weeks ago in a 5-2 vote by this council. In brief, we strongly object to the budget, tax, and spending actions undertaken by the Goodyear staff and approved by the Goodyear Council over the past 15 months. We seek a change in direction of spending and taxation and a reordering of priorities in which the citizens replace the staff as council's first priority. Although we would certainly prefer to immediately rescind the unnecessary tax increases you passed last year at this time, we believe a more cautious approach to correcting the errors of the past year would be prudent in this recessionary times of continuing uncertainty. So therefore, we are recommending a change which includes cost reductions and flexibility in timing. Our recommendations incorporate 4 fundamental principles. Principle 1, the budget recommendations must be fiscally sound, and therefore our recommendation is to reduce spending but not seek reduction of last year's tax increase until well into the new fiscal year, and only if revenues outstrip expenses. Principle 2, the budget must reflect a citizen-first approach to governing, and therefore taxes must be reduced before authorizing any additional increases in personnel compensation and benefits. Principle 3, the budget must place responsibility for the cost effectiveness of operations entirely on the staff, and therefore furloughs and pay cuts are included as an alternative only if staff is unable to keep budget under control. And lastly, Principle 4, the budget must demand greater accountability from our elected representatives. Reduce draconian control over operations by the city manager, and make citizens a direct part of the decision making. Thank you.
Karen Hong.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Hong, for those of you who don't already know me. I am a resident of Goodyear and have been for 7 years, and I live in Palm Valley. I owned a business in Goodyear for 2 years, and I am a mother of a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and have paid for their child care and private school in Goodyear over the last 3 years. I'm also a Goodyear White Tanks Rotarian and a Southwest Valley Chamber member and a recent graduate Class 16 of Leadership West. In order for me to have made it this far in my life and in my career, I've had to make pretty tough decisions. I have networked with a lot of people in our community across the West Valley, and I brought business cards of all these people that I've personally networked with. The decisions that you guys make tonight affect these people, and so I'm here to represent that community as well. Let's talk about the fiscal year 2010-11 budget. So the following are the recommended changes to tentative fiscal year 10 and 11 budget. Postpone funding of $400,000 of the APS traffic light system enhancement and a $1.5 million vehicle replacement reserve. 2, reduce the police uniform allowance by 1/2, or approximately $90,000, effective July 1st, 2010. 3, we need to limit fire overtime to $700,000, including FLSA mandates, saving approximately $90,000 for fiscal year 10 and 11, unless necessary to respond to emergencies. We need to update actions to budget to be accomplished during fiscal year. Revenues and expenditures projections for the entire fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2011 will be reviewed at the end of the first and the third fiscal year quarters. Positive feedback will result in reductions in sales taxes of 1/4% effective January 1st, 2011, and again only July 1st, 2011, returning the sales tax rates to 2%. Negative feedback, depending on severity, will result in unpaid furloughs for all non-first responder staff members, followed, if necessary, by pay cuts starting at 1% at lowest levels above $50,000, up to 10% at highest levels of pay, including 10% cut for mayor and council. For the first 2 fiscal years of 10 and 11 and 11 and 12, the total furloughs will not exceed 1 per month, nor shall pay cuts exceed the 1% and 10% levels. If additional funds are projected to be available after reducing sales tax to 2% and without infringing on the rainy day funds, acquire APS traffic light system for $400,000, followed by funding the vehicle replacement fund incrementally up to maximum of $1.5 million. Recoupment of canceled compensations and benefits will be considered in conjunction with the funding of the vehicle replacement fund. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susie Sandwick.
Good evening. My name is Susie Sandwick, and I live in Australia. My husband and I moved to Goodyear 5.5 years ago, and he retired from the Air Force. I am here tonight because I am concerned about the burden on Goodyear citizens and their visitors. I would like to propose some changes to the budget to maintain cost control. These changes are: change all compensation benefit suspensions to cancellation. Revisit each benefit later and justify to council before reinstatement. Effective immediately and continuing at least until July 1st, 2011, replace only 1 of every 2 personnel losses through attrition. All new requisitions to be approved by council in advance of any new recruiting activity. Do not fund any CIP projects not included in the tentative budget. Adopt a 4-day, 10-hour per day work week effective first full week of July and continue until first week of October. And finally, identify traffic signals which are currently unnecessary and temporarily replace with stop signs. Thank you.
Sean Rassus.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Sean Rassus. I live at 18129 West Juniper Drive in Goodyear, Arizona. I own Ground Control, a restaurant and wine bar in Goodyear. I'm a resident here and have been for the last 5 years. Father of 4. Additionally, I'm a major in the United States Air Force Reserve and serve as an F-16 instructor pilot at Luke Air Force Base. I represent business owners and residents alike, several hundred of which signed a petition asking you to pass a more responsible, citizen-minded budget. I'm here before you tonight to express concern over our excessively high tax rates. The state's recent increase of the sales tax by 1% has led many of my customers to question where the cumulative 11.3% tax on their bill goes. I didn't have a valid answer. Additionally, the council recently passed a municipal user fee schedule effectively raising fees to do business with the city by $350,000 per year. The majority of these fees place additional burden on our businesses at a time when we are struggling to survive. Do our businesses not already generate a huge amount of sales tax to feed the city budget? Do our citizens really need to pay 11.3% to tax to patronize a Goodyear business? I've spoken with each one of you and the city manager directly regarding these two issues. I appreciate the time that you spent with me answering my questions. The common theme among all council members was that our taxes are indeed too high. I also appreciate the challenges the city manager faces in the execution of the budget. As one of the last wine bars in the West Valley, we, like other businesses, have had to make incredibly tough decisions. Our city should be no different. Several of you have expressed concern about how we're going to get an FY12 balanced budget, but stand ready to pass this 11 budget and as is, let the manager, quote, do his best with it. We've presented you a way for him to be able to do just that, but with citizens' interests in mind. Our approach was indeed cautious, and the proposal does not differ greatly from the manager's budget. It places responsibility in the hands of all the city employees here tonight, as well as those not in attendance, to reduce spending immediately. The potential savings should enable the council to reduce some of the taxes, but not until such a point where revenues and savings make it prudent and wise to do so. Furloughs and pay cuts are included in the solution, but only if the staff is unable to keep their budget under control. The proposal makes every attempt to return the government to the citizens by making our elected representatives more accountable and make citizens a direct part in the decision-making of our city. My wife and I enjoy owning a business and living in Goodyear. We've made a lot of sacrifices, tough business decisions to do so. I'm asking you to take this opportunity to do the same with the business of running the city of Goodyear so that in the very near future, you bring our tax rate in line with the rest of the state. And I have here before I step away from the podium a proposal for consideration before you pass the budget this evening. And I'd like to present that to you now.
Yeah, please do so. Thank you.
I'd also like to enter into record the 340 signatures of our business owners and residents.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have one more speaker who previously withdrew his speaker card and now would like to speak. Stephen Gilman.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, I appreciate the opportunity to address you. Usually we try to stay apolitical as a union, but what's happened in the last several weeks directly affects our membership, and I think it needs to be addressed. Over the last couple of weeks, with the petition that has been circulating, some false information has been circulated along with that petition. Whether that information was intentional or not, I think we need to clarify some of those issues. The city manager did a fantastic job of explaining some of those questions, but I'd kind of like to go into more detail some of the misinformation that directly affects our membership. The first one that we heard, because this was addressed not just by people that asked some of our members and their families to sign petitions, but was addressed to us in the public when we ran on calls, was that we were asking for a huge increase in overtime for this fiscal year budget. That is blatantly false misinformation. There was an accounting error last year for FLSA, scheduled overtime, okay? Our scheduled overtime, FLSA overtime, is the exact same amount as it was last year. There has been no changes and no increases in overtime. As a matter of fact, next fiscal year's scheduled overtime has dropped from $631,000 to $605,000. So there's actually been a reduction in scheduled overtime. In addition, we mentioned, or people have mentioned, that potentially we have 14 extra firefighters and that might be costing the city money. Well, if you look at it from a standpoint, as the city manager explained before and council's been explained, we use those extra firefighters as bench strength. They fill in when firefighters call in sick or have vacation leave scheduled. Those firefighters have saved approximately $520,000 in constant staffing overtime. Okay? Also, when you look at those firefighters that they're talking about reducing, those firefighters at the bottom of the pay scale, making around $42,000 a year. If you multiply that by the 14 firefighters, and it comes up to about $580,000, those costs almost offset what we're spending on the saving of reduction of overtime. In addition, those same firefighters will be helping us staff Litchfield Park. That's going to make us almost $500,000. So kind of one of those, how can we even look at reducing staff if they're helping us make $500,000? In addition, we'd like to talk about the cost of training firefighters. If we were to reduce those 14 firefighters, you're looking at a cost of approximately $100,000 per firefighter, which would be $1.4 million total. Should we have to get rid of those firefighters, hire 14 new firefighters and retrain them, we're now looking at a combined cost of $2.8 million that the city would incur versus keeping them around to reduce staffing. All right? So in closing, what I'd like to say is there was a lot of misinformation out there. And I hope the City Council takes into effect that maybe not all these signatures were gathered with the right information. So the city, the fire union does support this budget because there was no reductions in staffing. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
No more speakers.
Okay. Thank you very much. To everyone, that was very professional and well-spoken presentations to council, so we thank you for that. Before I proceed to council, there was a lady who had a question. And would you repeat that question for us? We'll ask the staff to respond to that.
Okay. My question is, in the budget that I saw in the West Valley View, the general fund had increased significantly, whereas all the other budgets decreased. I'd like to know why your general fund, which you guys have control over, increased, and where this money's going to, and is it really necessary to have an increase in your budget?
Okay. Larry, do you want to do that, or John?
I don't know exactly what numbers are being referred to, but the operating budget, which is the general fund.
It's not operating, it's just a general fund, and it had city council and had general fund under city council.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
It was in the West Valley View, that's all I can tell
Are you talking about the whole city or council?
It said city council, I thought.
Well,
Yeah?
if that's true, it's easier to answer, obviously. It's just city council.
I should have brought it up.
Well, let me answer the question. There is a decrease of 2.8% from $73 million to $70.8 million in the budget this year. That's.
It wasn't the overall total, because even it's like, your office was broken down. that shows your operating.
Okay, so Larry, can I have that book? If you're referring to that, again, I don't know what you're talking about, but the mayors and councils,
It said city council, and then there was, it showed 2009 or 2010, and then 11.
well, the mayor and council is going up substantially.
Okay.
And that was because of the transfer of the 3 staff people that serve the mayor and the city council to the mayor and city council's budget. There was a corresponding decrease in that amount. That was $200,000 roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So that $200,000 increase in the mayor and council budget, there was a corresponding decrease in account 1320 in the city manager's office by that amount because they were transferred from the city manager's office over to the council office because that's where they're working. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The other comment, Mr. Mayor, was just so that people understand what we're talking about. There's been referred to several times the APS traffic lights. This is not the traffic signals, just so people understand. It is the street lights throughout the city that we're talking about recommending purchasing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, we have to have 2 votes now, and the first one relates to the real property tax. So I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the truth in taxation increase of $236,047 for fiscal year 10 and 11. And again, that's for the primary property tax increase with a corresponding reduction in secondary. So could I have a motion for that, please, to approve that, the truth in taxation increase?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion from Councilmember Osborne, a second from Vice Mayor Lord. Discussion on that? Yes, sir.
Question on the secondary property tax. As I'm going through the budget, I noticed we have some fund balance in the enterprise fund. And I realize, well, let me back up for a second. How much of the how much of the GO bond in the secondary property tax is still in there for this year?
Approximately $2.9 million.
$2.9 million, okay. The question I have, and I know we wanted to do that one more year, and I realize the $1.60 has been the policy. But to be honest with you, for a long time, I'm a proponent of the floating tax rate because I personally think focusing on a rate is the wrong thing to focus on. I think it should be the levy. So my question is on the balance, and I suspect some of that balance is for smoothing out rates over a period of time. If part of that $2.9 million was used by the enterprise fund as opposed to the secondary property tax, or what amount, how would that impact this balance? And what I mean directly is, would it impact the rate structure that we have currently in place? I realize the cash flow is a problem because it doesn't match the cash, but I guess my question is with the balance, can we tap some of that balance without impacting the rate structure?
To answer the question specifically, yes.
Okay.
We can. It will produce. We will have we'll start next year with approximately $9 million in the sewer and water funds. If we were to take, say, $3 million rounded off, we'd end up the year with $6 million. The cash flow, because we've only implemented phase 1 of the rate increases, would not be sufficient. So we would have a deficit, but we'd have to take that out of the reserve. So in effect, yes, you can do it. We do not recommend it, but yes, you can do it.
Well, let me ask you this then. From a smoothing standpoint, if you split the difference and you took 1.5 out of that 3 to bring down the secondary property tax rate, would it impact the smoothing of the rates? In other words, would it put more pressure on the current rate structure and implementation and process if you touch that reserve? And I realize it's running as an enterprise. I also realize that you want fund balance in there to smooth out those pieces, and you should never be running from checkbook to checkbook. What I'm looking at, though, is to see if there's some of that money because I'm hearing, tonight when we talk about property taxes and whatever, and again, I know it's a departure from our $1.60, but I don't want to hurt the rate structure that's in place. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it will not affect our rate structure negatively. It will reduce our ability to respond to a major crisis if one occurs, because if a well goes out, for example, we're talking millions of dollars to replace it. But as I mentioned, we do have $9 million estimated in reserves. This would use part of that $9 million, so it would lower the fund balance, and so it would operate on a negative cash flow, but it is a doable. Larry and I reviewed it this afternoon, and basically it is a doable thing.
What is the rate? What would the actual rate impact be, say, $1.5 million?
$1 or 1.5, well, it'd be $1.30 at the full 2.9, so I would guess roughly $1.45.
So we would be looking at going from $1.60 to $1.45 if...
Roughly, yes.
Okay. The only reason why I'm throwing this out to the group here is we've heard tonight about property taxes. And we've also heard also tonight that it's difficult for, some of the businesses. And I realize the taxes are going down anyway. But living north of 10, and we have people, we've been trying to align, and I know you want to do that next year, all of it, okay? But we've been trying to align the who's paying for the property taxes for those that, we're not crossing the lines where people throughout the city are paying the secondary property tax because some of them had GO bonds for water and sewer. And I'm just wondering if there's like a compromise here. We can split some of that difference to lower the rate as well on the secondary without, again, causing damage to the rate structure because we have enough fund balance in there. That's what I don't want to do.
I think technically the answer to your question is yes, we could do that. When I first sat with the City Council, I think it was March of 2008, and listened to the advance that was taking place, I was shocked to hear that the general fund was subsidized in the utility funds. So I have had this very stated goal of making sure, which the council agreed with, making sure that the utility funds pay for themselves since I've got here. And we had one more year that we're doing, so we're operations, there's no more general fund subsidies to the utility funds, and this is the first year of that. And there for operations, for capital, we were going to one more year, as you understand, because of the negative cash flow. If you want to accept that negative cash flow, it is something that we can do.
Well, I'm just throwing it out to my colleagues here on the dais. And again, I really want to stress, number one, that it does not, mess up the proposed rate structure, the revenues coming in because it's coming from the reserve. And, if we split the difference, say, at 1.5, we can get a little bit of a rate actually below 160. But again, we're working on floating on a levy, and we're not locking in on a rate, which will free up, a few cents for us and help on some of those issues that people have been looking at as far as the property tax. And I just want to make sure that, again, I know from a business standpoint you have reserves for a reason. I don't want to cause anything but by looking at this, I think it's doable, and that's why I'm just throwing it out to my colleagues here on the dais if they don't have a problem with floating the rate, because what will happen is next year, if the debt service kicks in, that rate may be different, obviously, when we're talking about now.
When do you propose putting this into effect?
Now.
And what happens on the case of emergency? Can you elaborate on that for us? Because water has been such a big issue.
If we end up the year at $9 million as we're anticipating, and we were to do this, so we'd have $7.5 million in reserves. As long as we don't have something that occurs that costs more than that, we can pay for it. That's water and sewer combined. We were also working towards creating our own, quote, rainy day fund of 4 months of utility bills payable in the utility fund. So those are the only things that would concern us. It would take a rather major emergency, I believe, to use up $7.5 million, but that's the only thing that we're really risking.
Is there a plan in this next year's budget for to begin that contingency fund, to begin adding to that contingency?
We're doing that right now. And
But it's not in the budget.
Well, it's part of the budget because you end up with a positive cash flow, and so that falls to the bottom line, so therefore it is working to increase reserves.
Can I ask another question on that?
Sure, I
Follow up on
think
that?
we're going to have to discuss this for another hour or so, frankly.
Okay.
I mean it. You're
This
bringing up
is,
something entirely new. Floating is a new world. And
Yeah, that's to me too, but,
I'm ready to do
just
that.
a question on, now I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, I mean,
On a
if-
question of that, of if there is money in, if we haven't developed that budget up to this point, what would we use in case, what if we had an emergency in the past?
Well, that's why
budget?
the city was on such a foolish trend, in my opinion. The city was saying that the 4 months that we had in the rainy day fund were the fund to take care of the utilities, the enterprise funds, and everything. And that's just, in my opinion, a wrong business decision.
That's not part of the 16.9.
That's the way the
That's-
city operated. It was part of the 16.3.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
So now we're separating that out so that you have
We
a
are in the
4-month.
process of separating it out.
Okay. And where is it reflected in the budget to begin with?
It's reflected in the fund balances. If you look at the utility funds,
Okay.
you're spending $9 million less than you're taking in effect.
Okay, and, okay, but we don't call it that.
No.
Where is that 9 million again?
Yeah, I don't see that.
Larry, it's in the fund balance. Could you point it out, please?
And we haven't seen a fund, third quarter expense for this fiscal year either.
That's correct. We are still processing it.
If you looked at, this is the May 17th, this schedule is on page 33 of the May 17th handout that we gave you. The columns, water and sewer, represent the fourth and fifth columns from the right. The bottom line in that schedule, those two numbers total just over $9 million. That's an answer to that.
Can you put it on the Elmo there, or
Sure.
blow it up?
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask just procedurally on this, I think that this discussion is relevant in the budget adoption and the special meeting that there. The real question on the roll call vote and the primary property tax for the truth in taxation, I'm not sure that that's part of that discussion, and I don't want that motion forgotten about. So I would ask that you have this discussion as part of the budget discussion after that vote. But if I could have Elmo, I'll show you this
Is
schedule.
that because the truth in taxation is strictly related to primary property taxes?
That is correct. The truth in
Bill is talking about secondary, correct?
that is correct.
Correct. Yeah, it would be nice if we could move ahead and get this one
Yeah,
part
let's get
done.
this one out of
Yes,
the
do you
way.
have anything else on it?
Get back on the budget.
Yeah,
Because this is budget stuff.
And then we'll incorporate that within all the other
This is how we
other
do this.
materials we have.
I will, just to answer that question, as you asked me to put it up. And I know you can't read the whole spreadsheet, so I've zoomed it up a bit. The total of these two numbers is the approximate $9 million that the city manager was referring to previously.
What's the heading for those two columns?
Those two columns, one is water and one is sewer. This one's water and this one's sewer. That's those column headings.
Close to $9 million.
And those are positive balances.
Those are positive cash balances projected at the end of the year. That's correct. That's the reserves that the city manager was referring to.
See, that's the part that's difficult because we don't have the third quarter. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where how well we've done this third quarter.
These
let
are
alone fourth quarter.
Right. These are estimates that we've made as we've gone through the process. These are. I looked this afternoon at our cash flow just to see where it was, and combined at this point in time, it's $11 million cash flow for those. But we have debt service payments coming later this month, And so, the numbers that were reflected here are, and that's just to answer the question you asked for, where it's shown. Okay?
Well, we're going to have to get back to that, I think.
Yeah. Because we need to go on with this.
Are there any further discussion on the truth in taxation increase? And that's the motion on the primary property tax levy. Any more questions or comments? Okay, I have had a motion and a second. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, what we have to do now is, and just please stay in your seats, it's just a technicality, legal technicality we have to observe. We have to recess the regular meeting and convene a special meeting to determine and adopt estimates of the proposed expenditures. And again, that gets back to the tentative budget, and that's what you were speaking on, 10 or 11 people spoke on earlier. And now we'll incorporate this floating rate concept, okay, in this discussion as well. Okay, so I'll recess the regular meeting, and I'm going to call a special meeting to order, and all members of council are in attendance. And now we'll consider adopting a resolution for the final budget. And I'll ask the clerk to read that resolution by title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 10-1382, determining and adopting the final estimates of proposed expenditures by the City of Goodyear for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2010, and ending June 30, 2011.
Okay, could I have a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Sousa and a second from Councilmember Pizzillo. And now we'll go into council discussion, and we've got quite a few things to discuss, obviously. Let's start, well, go, do you want to go now, Frank?
Well,
or do you want to wait for the vote?
I don't care. I can wait. Go ahead. I'd like to
Do
hear
you
more.
want to resolve the floating tax rate idea first?
Yeah, let's resolve that.
You're going to have to repeat all that.
Okay. When I was going through the fund balances, I noticed that we have, and again, when I was mentioning to the manager here, we have some fund balances, and I realize running a business, you do not want to worm from paycheck to paycheck. So the balances are used for various reasons. Number one, for emergencies, and number two, to even out the rate structure as those rates get into place, and I understand that. And my question was, since we had the almost $3 million of still water and sewer bonds in the GO, which is your secondary property tax rate, which is designed to, which includes everybody's paying for a water company that's north of 10. And I guess my question is I realized the strategy was to have all of that out by next year, all right? And I want to make sure that when we talk about this balance, that if we take, say, $1 million or $1.5 million out of this balance, whatever that number happens to be, that we do not put in jeopardy, a supposed rainy day fund, or we don't put into jeopardy a rate structure that we have in place in which you have your highs and lows, and that's what the reserves are for. The reserves are nice, so you don't necessarily have to do a rate. You've got something to fall back on, or in case something breaks. And that's kind of where I was going. And again, I know it's a new concept because typically we lock in at $1.60. My point is, I've never been crazy about the locking in a rate because it's just a mathematical calculation. I've been more inclined to locking in on a levy because unfortunately when you lock in on the rate when times are good and the valuations are going up, you have more money to spend. When times are bad, you have less money to spend. And like we see with our CFDs, what happens is as the rates start to climb, when people get locked into the rate, they think you're raising their taxes when it may just be needed to cover the levy. So at some point I wanted us to get over discussing levy because to me that's most important when it comes to property taxes. In fact, when I have my classes, that's always a tough kind of concept to get across to the students. But my point is I wanted to see if we could get some of that off of the GO, so less of the burdens put on those individuals that are north of 10. And not only that, it's going to bring down property taxes for everybody without having a negative impact on our fund. And 3, I think, might be pressing. Again, I understand that. About 1 or 1.5 might get us down from $1.60 to $1.40 or $1.45, whatever that number happens to be. And that's what I'm just throwing out to my colleagues out here to see if they're interested in doing that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, just as an addition to that, Joe, Councilmember Pizzillo, as I mentioned, yes, we can do that. We had, and the Citizens Budget Committee had recommended this in effect, and that's why during my presentation earlier, I mentioned that this fall we would be discussing the floating rate. This moves up the process by several months without us having time to do adequate research in that, but we did do adequate research today just to find out, could it be done without affecting adversely the rate? Yes, it can be.
The $9 million you're referring to, that is really a subsidy from the general fund to the enterprise fund, is that correct?
The $9 million is in the enterprise funds. Its source could be traced back to the general fund if we did detailed accounting, because we've been subsidizing the utility funds for many years. So if that answers your questions, yes, you could trace it back to the general fund.
But we do have some of the new enterprise fund in there, because
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, they're
we're
being
gathering
commingled
more.
right now.
Yeah.
The rates went up this last year, and so the rates, although it was phase one, the rates are just sufficient right now to cover the costs, but they aren't generating a major surplus yet, but they are scheduled to generate, I don't want to call major surplus because that sounds bad, but they are generating a surplus in the operating funds, so they will be building up the reserves in the future.
So this is a surplus at the end of the year. In fact, we discussed this at one time, I believe, John. This is surplus that we will have in the budget at the end of the year, and this is how we carry it over, putting it in the enterprise fund.
Yes.
And begin working in that area?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I think we probably need a work session on this.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I can make a decision on that tonight.
Well, and that's
With
why
no
I
background,
suggested.
no work session, no understandability that,
That's why we suggested that we do this along with the other tax questions that the council has in September. That's too late for this decision, though, that Joe's talking about.
I'm just not ready, Joe, I agree with what you're saying, and I like what you're saying, but do I understand it fully to honestly vote on it? No.
I don't either. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have more time on it. But I agree. I think you're on something.
Yeah, I like the fact you said it's going to possibly enter lower taxes for everybody, but I think I would like to see the numbers and kind of have a little more information on that as well.
It sounds like we'd like to delay it, but I still, what would this suggestion, what impact would that have on the enterprise fund?
It would, instead of a $9 million balance ending up this year, we would end up, let's say, with $1.5 million less than that. We'd end up with $7.5 million balance because there won't be sufficient cash flow to pay for it. So we will have to take it out of our checking book. So, for example, the savings account, which is the $9 million.
And I guess then the next question that follows is, first off, to the public, we've been subsidizing the enterprise fund on water since ever. So it's not something new, and I think this is the third time we've stopped it.
That's right.
Yet this may be the one time we succeed. But it's the concern is what really happens to this fund, and you answered that, John, but I'm concerned about, and I lost my thought process on that. Is this going to continue and delay the transition to the enterprise fund paying for itself? And if go ahead.
No, I don't think it will. It will, as I said, we were proposing that it happen a year from now. This would actually accelerate it because you're going to implement it half of it a year early, and then next year we'll take care of the rest of it. So I don't think it'll affect it that drastically from the standpoint of the enterprise fund being totally self-sufficient.
And if there's $9 million in there, or 7.5 if we implement this, why are we subsidizing the enterprise fund?
That's exactly what I've been working on.
I mean,
To make that transition.
And we're doing it again this year. You know, we've been using...
This year it's from the negative cash flow standpoint, is why we continued it, because the negative cash flow, we weren't going to deficit finance it, and so we were using the general fund to continue the subsidy.
I remember that came up at a council meeting where we decided because of the economic downturn and what was happening, we would delay that.
That's correct.
That's right. We had a schedule for it, if you remember, and we decided that
That
would
would
be
be
helpful
delayed.
if we delayed it.
Yeah, we had that in 2000
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's
But
kind
we're
of
close. We're close.
Yeah, I just am amazed that there's that much money available there.
That's what he.
Is that for O&M, or is it also for bonding capability, or just O&M?
It's for everything. It is the fund balance that we have in the water and sewer funds.
It's the carryover from this year.
Why are we
Well, not just this year. It's everything that's happened previously, yes.
Okay, but we just take the carryover and add that to it this year.
Yes, that's correct.
I kind of see it as a business reserve fund. I mean, if you're in business, it's your capital, and you would use it for a variety of things. It could be emergencies, it could be your rainy day, it could be for smoothing out rates, it could be for getting you through tough times. But you say if you got a business that's going to last for any period of time, you got extra capital there. If you don't, eventually you don't go very far. So that's what it's there. That's why I specifically asked the question if tapping it a little bit to try to bring down the secondary would hurt it, because I don't want to, destabilize that fund. And again, maybe, it's a little early on our discussion coming up, but I was just looking for some ideas to try to, bring down some of the cost to the businesses out there. That's all.
And just to make sure everybody understands, to answer your question specifically, no, we don't think it will hurt our chances if the council were to choose to proceed.
Wouldn't hurt our chances for the enterprise fund?
For the enterprise fund and the transition. I mean, we will get there, because, I promised you that we would in 2008 when I first heard that, and it's now taken us 2 years, and we're about to step over that threshold, so we are getting there. We did remove ourselves from the operating subsidy last year, and now we're removing ourselves from the general fund subsidy, the debt service subsidy.
John, when would this take effect? Let's say we talked about it this fall and we approved that. When would that take effect? Could
It would
have
take
to wait?
effect next year.
So we'd have to wait to the next budget year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure people would love to see the rate go down to $1.40. Would that affect our borrowing capability in the future?
Larry?
Or bonding capacity, yeah.
That's why we need to listen.
I think that's a good question. On the borrowing capacity in our 5-year CIP, the $2 million shown in there was part of the rate study that was done and is contemplated, and we don't have additional borrowings over the next, I believe, the next 4 years past that. Now, if growth changes that could, but I don't think that would affect the borrowing. But I also want to kind of point out, because your question, why, the total capital assets in the water and sewer fund as of June 30th of 2009, $184 million. And as you recall in the rate study that you approved about a year and a half ago, there was a replacement fund that was targeted. Most of that is really intended to be picked up in years 3 and 4. But that was part of why, because we really didn't have any type of a replacement fund. But as we talked about today, John's answered all those questions,
Larry,
but I hope that helps.
Could you, I don't know if the mayor was asking this, but you answered from the borrowing on behalf of the water and sewer fund, but the mayor may have been asking, how does it affect our borrowing ability in the general fund?
In general.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay. General fund, this should not adversely impact the borrowing in the general fund or out of the secondary property tax, it shouldn't impact it at all. We have our assessed valuation dropping. Am I going the right way, or, okay. We have our assessed valuation dropping, and in the city center discussion that we talked about, our assessed valuation is dropping down over the next couple of years. It'll be dropping even more than it has. That is what will adversely impact our ability to borrow rates and keep our property tax rates at the level that they are today. That is where the conflict is. Does that help you in that?
No.
Sorry.
I don't question your answer, but I'm not sure it helps me. Mr. Pizzillo, this floating rate, is that for the primary and secondary, or only secondary?
Secondary.
Secondary only. So the secondary right now, I forget the number, but it's 0.7 or something like that.
It was 80-some cents, as I recall,
Okay,
83.
so if we floated this by what would it become?
What would it be, Larry, if we took $1 million, instead of using the GO to pay the debt, we took $1 million out of the enterprise fund to cover it? What would it be?
Yeah, the math at $1 million, and yeah,
71.
the math would have been 15 cents less. Our staff ran that today. That's what I know. So I think it goes from 83, then 15 cents from that would take it to 68. Just secondary, it would take the $1.60 to $1.45.
Now, if you go out a couple years, that's what I was really referring to.
Yes.
Would this decision affect our capability of bonding for critical CIP projects?
No, we had programmed all water and sewer bonds.
No.
Okay. General fund
City
only.
Center, park
City
up in
Center.
Estrella.
City Center, as an example, no. This will not impact it either direction. What happens is the $1.60 rate, the commitment that the council has met over time, before when it was $2.10, and then in the last 6 years at $1.60. As you talk to people about the property tax and, say, GO bonds, at $1.60, if you commit to keeping the rate at $1.60, you can commit that is what your target rate will be, and that you will not sell bonds that would put you above that level. And that is what the history of a flat rate is, and why we've tried to maintain a flat rate.
But the suggestion is to move from that.
To move from that, then 2 years from now, 5 years from now, any point in the future, if you decided that you wanted to issue bonds to do city center, any project, at that point in time, you would also be making a conscious decision that that rate would in the future be increasing.
So if we would do what Mr. Pizzillo was talking about, if we could go to $1.40, we'd be saving taxes today. But if we want to continue to develop the city and move it forward, we're going to raise them in the future.
That would be correct.
Yeah.
But you got to keep in mind, Mayor, you are not focusing on a rate, you're focusing on a levy, so
That
that's...
needs to be illustrated. Can you explain that a little better?
See, that needs,
Or
Let me see if I can give it a shot. Right now, we assess a levy on how much taxes we're going to raise, typically to cover debt service, and that's what's in this budget right now. Typically, some of that is GO right now for this last year, which happens to be water and sewer. And what I'm suggesting is with that water and sewer, we have money, according to the manager, without hurting the fund. Instead of using all secondary property tax to pay that debt, is to use some of the enterprise fund. That's how you get the rate down. Now, the levy simply is how much money you're going to need to raise in your secondary property tax to pay debt. So if the voters go out and approve X, and you have X amount of dollars, then what you do is you focus in on setting the levy so that you can pay that debt. Now, typically, we were locking in at $1.60 that said we would never go above X. So we would only finance debt that would pay with $1.60. But the problem is assessed valuations went up. The city was getting money because what happens is you get rate times assessed valuations equal your levy, as opposed to focusing on the levy, we are focusing on the rate. The problem is when times get bad, you have to naturally raise the rate to cover your debt service like we're doing in the CFDs right now. So it kind of distorts when you focus in on a rate, and I think from an educational standpoint with the public, you should be focusing on what it takes to pay the debt. And that's why you're seeing with the CFDs, those rates are changing, because what happens is you still gotta still have a rate large enough to be able to pay your debt service. All I'm suggesting right now is we got an opportunity to use part without damaging the fund balance of the enterprise fund to bring down the secondary property tax, a little bit as a result of that. So in other words, using the secondary to pay the debt, and are actually using it to pay the debt for the water, we're going to use the enterprise to do it. And that's why I asked the question, are we damaging the reserve funds?
Yeah.
And the answer was no. That's why I thought maybe $1 million or...
But the future...
I hope that explains. I don't know if that quite...
It did. What you're talking about, I guess, is for us to finance our regular requirements in the city of Goodyear as we do our CFDs. Is
yes.
that correct?
In the same manner.
Yes.
We really need to consider
We
that.
need some. We need to study that.
I'm not ready to do that.
Yeah.
Enjoy it this time.
All I'm trying to do is throw out an alternative to, since we have some money in the enterprise, to bring down the secondary property tax rate. That's all.
Because the experience with the CFDs has not been a pleasant one.
No, it hasn't.
It's not been a good one, hasn't been pleasant, and if I have to rely on mentally calculating that, I'm not comfortable.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe, and I know everybody wants to leave the subject, but if we would go to $1.40, can we still do that without implementing your floating tax rate idea? Can you agree to that? By taking the money out of the...
You mean bringing it down, but then, yeah, you could do that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the floating is not...
If I understood that correctly, you're saying, could we lower it to $1.40 forever?
No.
Just this one time.
Yeah, just this one.
Yeah.
I mean, if in fact...
So next year, if we needed more...
No, we go back to $1.60.
Okay.
But, yeah, it sounds like we've got money, and and in fact, the enterprise fund should be obviously sustaining itself, and what I'm hearing tonight, it can, but I guess I'm just asking, if we talk floating rate next couple months,
right,
but go to $1.40 right now, that satisfies a lot of our issues out here when we're trying to reduce taxes. And basically, you'd have the secondary pick up the reduction. It wouldn't be the primary. You want to keep the primary where it is.
That's correct.
But if, is that, okay, and then you refill that with this enterprise fund, is that right?
That's correct.
Wow.
One thing, I was just taking a look at these numbers. I was just taking a look at these numbers. I mean, this is a very rough napkin calculation. The operating funds for the water and sewer right now are, whoops, nope, that's wrong, are basically roughly 16 million for water and sewer. So if we're after the goal of having 4 months of operating in your reserves like we do in the rainy day fund per the charter, that would say that you'd have to have roughly 6 million, which is where we're going to be at if you use this. Is that a really backhanded way of looking at it, Larry? Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is that basically we'd be there even with this.
There's nothing stopping you from going to $1.60 next year. This could be a one-time deal for the enterprise because you're going to do the rest of the enterprise next year anyway. This just helps us mitigate some of the issues that are out there to bringing down taxes. That's all. I'm just throwing out this idea to see if this will get us there without harming, and I'm hearing it won't harm our fund balance and enterprise fund.
No,
if we do $1 million.
And I mean, theoretically, from the standpoint of a policy decision, you're headed in the right direction because, as the mayor has referred to, north of I-10, in effect, is subsidizing south of I-10 because of the property tax payments. Right. So if we were to reduce those property tax payments, obviously we're headed in the right direction, and that's what we've been working towards for a long time. It's just taking a little longer than we had thought.
But to get to your point, Mayor, it doesn't mean you're stuck there. You could still do the $1.60. This just gives us a little relief to our businesses and our residents, a little more than they're going to get with the $1.60, that's all.
But we had several residents want us
Right.
to cut taxes.
Right.
And this is a way of doing that, and it affects every person who owns something in
Right.
Goodyear.
So tell me
Who owns property in Goodyear.
why it's taken the time frame mid-year that you were going to come to this decision and suggest it.
Because if we had a cash flow up there right now, this will show that the water and sewer fund will be operating at a deficit position because more cash is going out than the rates are bringing in. That's what it's going to show.
But in reality,
You have a fund balance.
In reality, we have a fund balance to smooth that out.
Which will meet the goals of some of the individuals out there and businesses that are looking for a break on the property taxes. And we can do it without harming the fund. That's all I'm trying, that's the only point.
I like
How much of a break is it?
Can you tell us, say, $200,000 home?
15 cents?
15 cents is what he just told us.
Yeah.
30 bucks.
How much?
30.
$30 because on a 15 cents on $100 on a $100,000 home would be $15. More than that?
But on business assessed valuation, it's going to be a larger amount.
That's very true.
Yeah, the businesses are going to be greater, so,
Yeah, because they pay more.
right.
Yeah.
I'm just
Well, I'm
throwing
getting a little
ideas
more
out.
comfortable.
I'm just throwing out ideas here to try to,
Hey, we're with you, Joe.
We're getting there, Joe.
All right.
I'm getting a little more comfortable.
okay.
Understanding a little better. I didn't know we
He's
could
never
do
made a
that.
budget decision like this at the time, so quickly.
Well, if we,
This would be for just a year, right?
yes.
So, what's a year? I guess what's a year?
What's another?
We could take an amendment to our motion.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, you'd make an amendment for fund transfer to cover the debt service, then I think you address it in your levy in 2 weeks. So
I
first
can't
step,
hear you.
You'd make an amendment on your final budget adoption to authorize the balance transfer. Then you would reduce your levy in 2 weeks to the $1.40. 45, sorry.
$1.40,
How does that
right?
sound?
$1.40?
No, it's $1.45 is our rough estimate. Somewhere, it'll probably be closer to $1.45 than it will be to $1.40. Yeah.
First step this evening would be the amount you're going to authorize for your fund transfer. That'd be your-
Did you say that, we can't hear you up here, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Your first step this evening would be to authorize your fund transfer. So pick the dollar amount from the enterprise fund, authorize that to be transferred for the debt service, and then that's incorporated into your final budget adoption. Then the second step is calculate what that works out to be on your property tax levy, and then that is handled on July 12th.
Why don't you make a motion to that, and I'll second it.
You better make that motion.
I'll make a, let's
Joe's
see,
gonna make that motion.
I'll make the motion, but it's, say that again, I'll make sure I get it right.
Well,
The motion,
you can make it.
Now, I think you want to pick an amount. I'm hearing
$1 million.
$1 million. So you want to authorize
Want to authorize
$1 million transfer from
$1 million transfer from the enterprise fund to pay the debt service
Correct.
for the secondary property tax,
And update the schedules accordingly.
and update the schedules accordingly.
Okay, I'll second that.
Excuse me.
Oh, wait a minute,
I
I'm
just want to point out that if you say $1 million, that is going to be more than $1.45, because a million, we were using $1.45 on $1.5 million.
Okay.
All right, well, can I change, we can do the $1.5 million, right? Yes. All right, now I'm going to change my motion to $1.5 million.
Okay, and I'll second that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Now, that's an amendment to the
Mr.
motion.
Souza, you?
No,
And that saving is
just
how
as long as
much?
I know we can do it, change it next year.
So I can repeat this?
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion, correct?
Doesn't need to be a roll call.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to the motion, to the main motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It was a quick understanding on my part. I hope you noted that.
Well, I think it's a good thing because just cut taxes by $1.5 million.
Hey. Now he wants a raise.
No, he's asking him not to take away his pay.
Okay, discussion now on the motion, or?
Would you accept another amendment?
Sure.
I like what I heard on the update actions to budget to be accomplished during the fiscal year, and that's the revenues and expenditures projections. You all have a copy of this. For the entire fiscal year ending July 30th, be reviewed at the end of the first and third quarters. Positive feedback will result in all of this in that. Positive feedback will result in reductions in sales taxes of 0.25% effective January 1st, 2011, and again July 1st, 2011, returning the sales tax rate to 2%. Negative feedback, depending on severity, will result in unpaid furloughs for all non-responder staff members, followed by, if necessary, by pay cuts starting at 1% lowest level above $50,000 up to 10% the highest level of pay, including 10% cut for mayor and council. For the two fiscal years of 10 and 11 and fiscal year 11-12, total of furloughs will not exceed 1 per month, nor shall pay cuts exceed 1% and 10% levels. And then the additional funds be available after reducing the tax rate to 2% without infringing on the rainy day funds. Acquire APS traffic light system. It's not traffic light, APS light system for $400,000, followed by funding the vehicle replacement fund incrementally up to maximum of $1.5 million. Recoupment of canceled compensation benefits be considered in conjunction with funding of the vehicle's replacement fund.
I'm not quite sure we got there, so let me think.
Okay, so you're making a motion?
That is a motion.
Okay, okay, we have a amendment to the main motion that incorporates the provisions of this particular document, is that correct?
That was handed to us tonight.
Okay, all right.
I'm reading this part, yes.
Okay, so I have a motion, do I have a second? Okay, is there a second, or am I going to have to step aside?
Well, I'll do a second just so we can discuss it, because I'm not sure what we have here.
That's what we need.
Okay?
That's what we need.
All right, so I'll do a second so we can discuss it.
I have a motion from Mr. Cavalier and a second from Mr. Pizzillo. So it's now open for discussion. The only problem I have right now is there other money out there? I mean, if we've got this kind of money that we can capitalize on from the enterprise fund, we don't need to be talking pay cuts and furloughs. If we can reduce the real property tax like we just did, and still you said there was actually more you weren't worried about, then
what?
You thought you could actually do more than 1.5 million
from the utility funds. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, is it?
But if that's the case, then this wouldn't take effect, because as it's stated.
Well, that's a good point. That's correct.
I know it's getting late, and I got to digest. I'm not quite sure exactly what it's saying. That's the problem I have.
I would also, I brought my own ideas tonight, and I know that you would like to add in some of our citizens' ideas. And I think to give us all a fair shot to even read over this and digest this, let me introduce a couple of my thoughts. Then I don't see us moving forward on this vote this evening, if that's possible, legally timely at the same point. Is that what we're talking about? By discussing these options?
This
would make the vote move forward, wouldn't it?
This is amendment to the motion to move to a final budget, incorporating these.
Okay, well, I haven't even read all of this.
I know. I understand it.
This evening.
I know. What is the
Deadline.
what is the deadline for a final budget? Correct.
Yes, you're going to have to go out at least, I think, 14 days prior to the 12th. I think 28th is the date I'd come up with, is when you need to take a vote.
So we could have members of this council really absorb this and vote on it again. Vote on it in the future.
Vote on the
before
final budget.
by the 28th. Is that a correct
I
statement?
think what you'll need to do is recess your special meeting, because you're in a special meeting, and you look at the statute and it says a special meeting will follow the public hearing. So I think you'll want to recess your special meeting to a later date, if that's what you choose to do, but not actually close out the meeting, just pick it up at a later date, if that makes sense.
In other words, leave it where it stands.
Leave it where it stands.
Leave it where it stands.
Yeah.
I have a question, and I talked to Sean. I think he came to all of our offices or met with us all. And what I expressed my concern with a lot of this was, and a lot of the information that he gave me is, no one has any amounts on what it will save. It's really easy to say, have a furlough. Have a furlough day over here, or do this. But I have no concrete scale. Because a lot of these, although they're very good ideas and they sound like they're really cost savings, when you look at them, I think John actually did get some of the numbers there. It's not going to save any money. And I think that's what we need to look at, is what it's going to save. It says, if necessary, pay cuts. But there's no benchmarks. There's no performance. Where is our performance? Where are our benchmarks? At what percentage do these kick in? At what percentage don't they kick in? I mean, to get the information I need, this needs to be very detailed. Like, we're talking like studies done to find out exactly what percentage these come in, because each employee also has benefits attached to them, and to figure out what the percentages and where they all come in, just to say, you know, if you're making $50,000, 1%, well, how much is that going to save? Because as we saw tonight, a lot of our people make under $50,000, and 1% for them, and then 10% of the highest pay. What is the highest pay? Where is that benchmark? You know, how do we know if we make these benchmarks? I don't think that, you know, as a council, our job is to look through every paper clip and every Post-it note that is spent in every single department. And I agree with exactly what the mayor just said. I mean, we just cut property taxes. Do we really need to look to cut to furloughs? I think we should be awfully proud as a city that, you know, Phoenix just started furloughs this week, you know, or last couple of weeks. They just started furloughs. We have to keep in mind that we haven't had to do that, and I think that's a good thing. And I'm pretty quiet over here. I've learned a lot on the budget in the last couple of months, but I think we have to look, what is our primary obligation as a city? It's fire, it's police, it's public safety, it's protection, it's water, it's sewer. We're meeting those. We're keeping the staff. We shrunk our staff. I think just to have furloughs just because we need to cut more, I'm not seeing how that's going to be benefit to a city. And then when we cut those services, if we cut people, you know, what is going to be the cut, the corresponding cut on our services to our citizens? Because I had so many emails from people that said, don't cut police, don't cut fire, don't cut our services, we've cut enough. So for me to look at this, I would need a lot more information. There's some good ideas, there's some thoughtful ideas. I appreciate the fact that there's thoughtful ideas, and I like the fact we're going to look at taxes. But I just don't have enough information to add this as part of the budget because it isn't detailed enough for me.
And the idea that it costs to add back in those people.
Yeah.
And the training and all that, that's not in here.
You know, and if Mrs. Osborne wants to speak, but in response to that, I don't think we can expect the citizens to be able to provide us the details that you're looking at.
I realize that's why I would need more info. I couldn't vote on it today.
And, okay, but you might be able to vote on it later.
Yeah, if I had the information on how it...
The real message here is, I think, that they want to reduce their taxes, and they want to see various ways to ameliorate the negativity associated with less income to the city. And that's really the message here. And I think that I think there's good ideas here.
There are some good ideas here, too. And Mayor, if I may, one thing this does is it will give the staff more of an investment in the city to try to keep the expenses down, and I mean, looking at it from that point of view, they'll be working to try to save money along with everyone else.
But I think that's been the mindset of the staff. I think they've been
Well,
working.
you think that, but you don't know
They've been
that.
working committees. I mean, we've actually got documentation that's is being done, has been done. So, no, I can't go along with that.
Well, no, I think it's an incentive. I'm just saying, it's one of the things that's one of the rationales you could use for it, is the fact that it would give the staff an understanding that, hey, you've got to work toward this just like everyone else. And now whether you live in Goodyear or not, you're invested in this city, and do your part to try to bring it all back.
Can make a couple suggestions. First of all, on the APS traffic lights, or the traffic, or the APS lights, it's going to come back before us anyway, even if it's approved in the budget. Is that correct? Yes, it is. So, I mean, you don't even have to make that decision now. You can vote later not to do it. On the vehicle replacement, I think it's an idea, but the problem I have is I'm the one initially when I was elected was disappointed that there were no reserve funds in doing this. And I'm concerned about the schedule now. It's my understanding they need about 1.5 on the police cars to keep, is that correct?
This year's budget will spend 1.1 million of the 1.5, and it will leave 400,000 in the fund as a seed fund.
You know, I mean, if I don't have a problem, you know, if we need to repopulate the seed fund, but my concern is to have, you know, those vehicles running out, and, you know, especially the public safety vehicles. But like I say, the APS, we'll do that again. I mean, that's coming up. I don't understand the 90,000 on the police uniforms. Is that something that they're, and maybe the chief can address that now? Is that something they're getting now that, or I thought they gave up a lot of that stuff.
If I could address that, Joe. The police have a uniform allowance of $2,000 and some odd dollars a year.
Okay.
The fire also had $2,000. The fire department came in and gave up half of their uniform allowance. The police have not. The theory is that police uniforms do cost more. You have leathers and things involved, but that is not anything that we have studied. It's nothing that we're recommending. The uniform allowance is incorporated into the budget today. The fire's at $1,000 some odd dollars, and the police are at $2,000 some odd dollars.
You know, I think there's some good ideas, but I think overall, from a goal, I think the idea is to try to keep looking at the revenues and expenses, and maybe Joanne's got something more specific, to try to get us down, because it was temporary for 3 years anyway. I personally think the restaurants are the first thing, but that's just me personally, because it's way out of whack at 4. I would rather see that go down before I see the other one, only because that's, to me, is off the charts.
And,
So.
it stimulates the economy.
Yeah, so.
It's,
So, I mean, I think we're all talking some of the same things. We just cut 1.5 million out of the property taxes, and I don't know if there's a way we can do an amendment that says we put an emphasis on reviewing this quarterly to try to get to that goal. I mean, we were looking at, a retreat to figure out, and one of your things on there was to figure out a strategy on restaurants and some of the other stuff.
We're planning to come back to the council for a September workshop, which we've talked about in the past, to discuss all of the different tax proposals.
And that, I mean, some of that, Mr. Mayor, may need further, review in that type of setting, because we're looking to try to get to the same thing. The question is, maybe we need that type of a deal or advance or retreat or whatever you want to call it, where we try to grapple with that.
No, I think that's great, and I certainly support your idea on maybe we need to be looking at food and beverage versus retail sales. But it is really impressive. I mean, the people are out tonight, and they're concerned about their city.
Yeah, bring out some ideas.
Let's capture that, okay? Mrs. Osborne.
Half of them left now, darn. It's 9:15.
Joanne, we want to hear the rest of your...
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just wanted to thank the people that did come out, because I know we have supporters, we have people with opposition, but you know what? We all came at the same time to have a great Goodyear, and that's the bottom line. That's the goal for everybody, and staff included, and I'm thankful for that. Over the last few years, I know that the citizens of our town have always figured that I'm the business person up there, and I should have some ideas, and I haven't voiced them, and I haven't voiced my principles, and I have not voiced some changes I would prefer to see. And I'm going to do that tonight. And some of them I know will not make everyone happy. Some will be, I hope, put into consideration. I wanted the council to hear them. I wanted our city manager to listen to them. And I know that just as our citizens gave those thoughts, people are going to have to think about them. And it's nothing to be decided upon tonight. However, that was great of Joe's thing that he came forward with. First of all, I believe that last year when we raised, and I'm going off my own notes just so I stay on track for everybody. I believe last year when we raised the retail tax, had layoffs and cut spending, we were on line with the best plan at that time. We have a retail tax which is all-encompassing with the exception of the restaurants and bars. I would like to propose that we separate a food tax from the retail tax. I believe that we are not at the juncture to lower the full retail tax at this time. However, we can more manageably lower the food tax, which would put money in all of our pockets. This would not happen overnight. It would, in fact, take some research and go through the proper channels. And a rough estimate of lowering so we have a retail tax. If we take the food tax out, that was just, bread and butter at the grocery stores, and we lowered that by 0.5%, we would probably be in the neighborhood of $500,000. Okay. We also know how the restaurants and bars are. We just had a little bit of that discussion. Across the valley, we're the highest. I wanted to lower this last year, but then again, seeing what the plan was going forward, it could not be part of that picture. I would like staff to bring back in work session, which obviously has already been discussed, and ask that that be lowered by also a 50%. Ballpark figures in that area are in the 500,000. So between those two, we're looking at $1 million, roughly. Now, I know that the figure for the food tax is kind of out there. We're not real sure how much we get out of that. Last year, I voted against the use tax. I was the only one, and I still think that that was extremely unfriendly to business. Our businesses have no other option but to go outside of the city to buy their equipment, and I would ask that in the future businesses be exempt from that tax. I believe in the principle of sowing and reaping. I believe that a well-trained and educated staff bring added value to any organization. I propose that we reinstate the tuition reimbursement to our city staff. If this needs to be offset monetarily, then remove that floating holiday. I believe that we need to approve the investment of those APS lights. The rate of return on this investment is 22 months. I believe that is worthwhile, and I do know that that was a matrix suggestion. That's kind of lower on my priority list, but I think it's the rate of return is going to exceed itself. I have had the privilege of sitting down with some of our fellow business people, and specifically the gentleman from Ground Control. We were discussing that vehicle replacement fund, and we discussed that when a business's equipment doesn't have the money to repair itself or take care of that, it's showing a failure within that business. And equipment in the city of Goodyear are vehicles, and so we need to take care of that. And when we're talking about vehicles that are going on 9 years old, that's a failure, and we need to take care of that. So I'm still supportive of that $1.5 million for the vehicle replacements. Now, I'm not exactly sure where it's going to come from, but I still support it. Now, what I'm not convinced of is the year after that, within the next budget, we're looking at $2 million more for that vehicle replacement. And to me, that has to be justified. And maybe it will be, but it has to be justified in my case. Let's see. I believe that management has removed all the frozen positions, haven't you, John? Yes. With the exception of 3. And I have to tell you, though, there was one position that concerns me that was not one of those saved positions, and that was our business liaison. I believe that we need that employee that bridges the gap between departments, between the Community Development Department and between Economic Development and between businesses themselves and the city. We need that liaison, and I would hope that in the future we could have that person back. We need to have a one-stop shop type of position. I know that our city manager and our staff have done an outstanding job in these last couple of years, not only dealing with a recession, with this economic storm, but multiple developer bankruptcies and the ballpark, and just so many things that has been thrown on the city's plates, and have done their best to manage through it. And I'm very pleased for that. As for tonight, I hope that we can decide to put off this vote for, I guess, a week or two, and go through a lot of these things that we've been discussing.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just one thing, Ms. Osborne. It is all positions have been eliminated except 7. Yeah, I think you mentioned 3.
Mrs. Lauritano?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things Joanne said. I think I was surprised we have an 11.3, if I go out to eat, an 11.3 tax. I have a problem with that. We are not a resort town. We are, I mean, you see the higher, kind of like, I want to say almost gouging taxes when you go to some of these resort destinations. And I would hate to see businesses close. We need to bring more businesses in. I didn't realize we lost the business liaison. We need to utilize the assets we have here. We need to bring businesses here. We need to bring retail here. And we need to become as business friendly as possible. I don't think that's inclusive of slicing the budget either. So I said, give me information on where we can save money, what we can save to keep the services for our citizens. I think we're actually in a really good position. But I think when we talk through the taxes, that's probably the first one we need to look at, and we need to gauge that on the economy and slice it, maybe not as much as some people would like right away, and maybe tear it down a little bit. Because 11.3, that is, once you hit above double digits to go out to eat, I can see where people look at the bill and say, that is awfully high. And that's just not really, that's going to keep people from going out. If you have a family of 4 or 5, you're not going to go out if you're looking at, an extra 10%. Or as we were talking about, who's going to cut? They're not going to pay the server their tip because they're going to be like, oh, well, my bill's higher than I thought. And that hurts a lot of people who are on the, don't make a lot of money, which is concerning. I have no problem waiting and getting some information. There's a lot of good ideas here. Maybe we take one of them, maybe we take another. I'm very numbers oriented, so I don't mean they're bad ideas. I want to look at them. I think we need to preserve fire. I think we need to preserve police. Those are important things because a lot of those services, until you need them, you don't know. And if it's our loved ones out there, we want to make sure that they're there for all of us. With regard to the property taxes, I'm glad we're seeing lower taxes because higher taxes don't bring business here. We do have a problem in the city. We're not going to have a city center, unfortunately, for a couple years. So we're going to have to think of other ways to get revenue into this town because we need people to come here. We've got a ballpark. We need to get, I went to the movie. I was talking about John, the movie at the ballpark. There was like 2 businesses there. He says there were 600 people there. There weren't a lot of people there. We need to get that information out. We need to get events here, concerts. I don't care, rock concerts. Get some people in the city, so that they'll know about ground control. They'll know about other businesses. I'm a small business owner, and when people don't have money to spend, the disposable income is the first thing. There's some ideas that you guys talked about that, and I said, well, I don't know if that's a good idea in each individual. I think we talked about the 4-day work week, and brought up the thing, where, if you have parents with kids in daycare, that makes an awful long day for little people in daycare. So there's some things there, maybe not work out so much. I think John's done a really good job, cutting, and I think we can do a lot of this without very little cutting, maybe some tweaking here and there, and we can have the goals of lower taxes, because until we have the lower taxes, we're not going to get more business here. People are not going to come to Goodyear. Right now, which I will be visiting ground control now that I know it's there, but there's a lot of businesses. We don't have a lot of restaurants here, that we could have and we could bring here. It'd be nice to get some really nice restaurants here, get some business owners to bring stuff here. So, get the information. Let's see where we can tweak things, but I think it's a pretty good budget right now.
I'm sorry. I had one more sheet. I had 3 more points.
One more sheet.
I would like to see within our volunteers base that we have a volunteer person that is within the police department, that their job will be to take care of all these false alarms and to bill the alarm companies for those false alarms. I would like to see that. I understand that this next idea may already be going forward. I believe that we need a volunteer landscaping corps, and that corps will tackle our right-of-ways. But I think that that may already be starting with VIPs or something. And lastly, something to consider. Currently, it sounds like we have our pool open during the winter months. And I say shut it down, and we use that investment in the YMCA that we have been giving to every year.
I thought we did shut it down.
The pools are shut down in the
I
winter.
was told just the last couple of weeks that the pool was open during the winter. That's what I was told.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, if I could, I'd like Mike to answer that.
Can't believe they're open during the
Good
winter.
evening, Mayor and City Council members. Our pool is open Memorial Day to Labor Day. If we do utilize it off-season, it is specifically for rentals, and a rental cost is charged to offset the cost to operate the pool during that time. The main cost associated with operating a pool off-season is, of course, heating the water as well as lifeguards. However,
That's not taking place?
only if we have inquiries that are looking to rent our facility, then we look to charge a fee associated with offsetting that expenditure.
Is that 100% charge?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know that part. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion? There are so many ideas floating around here. I'll be honest with you, with a 2-week timeline, I'm not sure we're going to be able to pull that off. I think this really needs a sit-down kind of retreat with a commitment to the citizens that will address these issues. But my concern, there's a lot more information, and I hate to rush something like this. And I think there's value in making the commitment, because there's a lot of good ideas on here as a follow-up post-budget. Because what's nice about a budget, it's a business plan. It can always be amended. There's $61 million on a line item that, from an appropriation standpoint, you can move all kinds of things around if you get approval from the council. That's what's nice about a budget and a business plan. So my suggestion is let's set up and follow through what the manager is talking about as far as an advance or retreat or whatever you want to call it. Make a commitment to address this, what Joanne has, what everybody has, see if we can come up with a strategy to move forward, and then incorporate that in whatever we do to make any changes we may have, with amendments to the budget. I think thinking it out thoroughly, I think, was a better approach, because I really don't think in the 2-week timeline we have, we're going to do it justice addressing all these issues. I really don't. I mean, I was amazed we actually got the 1.5 out tonight.
You got yours. What about the rest of the people?
No, I'm just saying. I think we will get the rest, but I think it's going to require maybe a half a day sit down, retreat where we sit down maybe on a Saturday or whatever to discuss on how, because it's a strategy issue. I mean, we can't flip a switch tomorrow and say restaurants are 2.5%. It's not going to happen. We got to figure out strategy-wise how we're going to approach it, how we're going to go about getting to that point. And I think a nice brainstorming session with all of us there on a Saturday, 4 or 5 hours. We may need 2 of them. Maybe need a weekend doing that kind of stuff. We come out with a clear plan. Like I say, the nice thing about a budget is it's a business plan. It can be adjusted with amendments and variety, and then implement that piece with a commitment that we'll do that.
And I think that makes sense, but I excuse me, at this, if we do have this retreat, I think what I really, I love reducing the tax to $1.45, but I even more love the fact that the citizens are coming up and they're starting to speak out in defense of what they think is their quality of living, and I very much appreciate that's what they're doing.
Certainly do.
But I would like them to be incorporated in our session and let them talk to us too, because these are their ideas. And we need to make sure that these citizens who are presenting ideas to us are part of that get-together, that gathering in which we discuss budgeting, taxation, expenditures, and that sort of thing.
I thought the Citizens Budget Committee was organized to do exactly that.
Okay, this apparently, if you believe what Gelser said, it was totally unsuccessful. But I don't know how you can criticize this sheet very much.
We're not
right?
No.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why don't we incorporate these thoughts, these minds, into our discussion?
Mr. Mayor, these are public meetings. I mean, there's no problem with, when we do the retreat or
come in.
advance, to participate and provide additional clarification on this. I don't have a problem with that.
Because I think I attended, before I was on council, one of the work sessions, and I brought forth some ideas and did participate. So I'm surprised to hear that we can. But I'd just like to add to Joanne's talk about, Joanne, you were talking about food, and just recently we had a municipal tax code commission meeting, and I'm the vice chair of that. And Tempe came forth for a food for home consumption. They took away all their taxation for that. But what they did do, and I have to tell you, they did increase their sales tax. And so the sales tax was up for election, and I don't know. Do you know if their sales tax passed in Tempe?
I believe it did.
It passed.
Yes.
It went to a buck.
It's still lower than ours, I think.
It's 1.8 or 2% now.
Yeah. So I like that idea. And the same thing that you talked about, Joanne, the business liaison. One of my points was that I'd like us to come up with some model city plan for small businesses, and I would like us to take those fees that we so easily passed and go through them and analyze what fees of that could we cut. Still, we're looking, I know we still have a revenue, and we cannot forget, the reason we're here doing this is because we had a revenue problem. So we have to keep that in mind. But I would like to have some type of plan on the city's part for the small businesses and be able to sort of analyze that so that we can encourage them and make them more successful. So I don't know what our parameters are on that, but I would definitely like to do that. Let me see. I'll just finish up here. I really, I'm still concerned for the next budget, as you know, and I really would like to see us be sure that we're getting information and making decisions on how, if the budget or if the economy continues to turn for the worse, I don't want to wait until later to find out what we're going to do. I want staff to be totally aware if we're going to have to cut salaries, cut positions. So I want early preparation on that, so everybody's fully aware of what direction we're going to have to take. Now, hopefully that won't happen, but I certainly would like that. And then I know I talked to you today, and you said you would continue to monitor the sales tax increase to eliminate that as soon as possible. Because, everybody says, so once a tax is voted in, it's never going away. Well, I'd like to disprove that theory and make that happen. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just want to have the opportunity to thank the Budget Committee for the work they did. They did a lot of work. They had a lot of good suggestions. As you say, some of them we're incorporating. We've been under a lot of pressure economically. Emotions have been running very, very high, And I think those emotions have resulted in a lot of misunderstandings, misrepresentations, accusations, angry exchanges, reflecting over what's been happening the last 6 weeks. But I've come to one conclusion, and that conclusion is that I may not agree with all of you and all your suggestions, but I do agree that you have Goodyear, genuine interest in Goodyear, and you care about the place you live. So, I thank you for that. So even though we're not always on that same line, and that same line of thought, I know that the underlining reason for this is the city of Goodyear and what's good for it. And so I thank all of you.
You know, we need to bring together the subjects which we would discuss on the 28th. We've sort of gone beyond that, beyond budget issues, and we're really talking about 10-11 budget, and I think and maybe a fall retreat makes a lot of sense to discuss bigger things, but we do need to get together by the 28th and discuss the specific 10-11 budget questions.
Take a vote on this.
Then, yes, yeah, and I would, we have Joanne has ideas, and I think Lori has, Sherry. I'll probably make that mistake forever, but and then this paper here. I wonder if Joanne and the group, Citizen Recommendation, if they would take what we've been discussing today and revise this with something that reflects the progress we've made this evening. Is that a good suggestion? And then we'll go over that on the 28th. And we'll basically stick to this 10-11 budget. Okay?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. So are you suggesting, which we recommend, that the budget be approved this evening?
No. We're going to, like Rourke stated, we're going to just delay, right? Recess, is that the word?
Recess this meeting until.
We're going to recess the meeting. We have an amendment on the table, but probably we should rescind that amendment, which is this, because they're agreeing to revise this in view of the current situation. And then, Joanne, if you present yours before the 28th also, so we can really think through this stuff. Is that a good idea or not?
Well, but my only concern, Ms. Mayor, I think it's more in depth than that. I was hoping that we could get past the budget and then have the retreat with a commitment to do this, because I think we're rushing in the 2-week period of time to fix whatever we're going to fix, because there's bigger issues on the table. There's the deal with how are we going to approach addressing the restaurant, the food, et cetera. What's our strategy? That's why I suggested that if we can get this part behind us, the budget is a plan. It's easy to be amended. If we make a commitment that we're going to have this advance and 30 days or whatever, have the public involved to come to some kind of consensus, I think we'll have a better product than try to rush something in 2 weeks. That's my only concern. I think we're rushing something for 2 weeks with all this stuff on there.
Yeah, but in 2 weeks.
I think we can do a better job if we're all in the room doing an advance or a retreat, a couple days to do that. I'm just concerned. We all have different schedules and whatever. We're going to put this together. We're going to miss something. I don't think it's going to be as good of a product if we. That's just my concern.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I suggest that we put this off until the 28th, and that we do implement those things that we can that don't carry a lot of depth that Councilman Pizzillo is concerned about, where we may screw it up, and take what we can and get some of that stuff fixed by the 28th. Because a couple of things that Councilwoman Osborne said, I think are easy enough to fix. And so, but let's think about it till the 28th. That's what I would suggest.
I'm in favor of what Joe is saying. If you look at the budget schedule and how many meetings we've had to get where we are now, I would like it in a more organized manner and take the time it's going to take to develop what we should be developing in quality of what we want to do.
Well, I agree with that, but there are some things that are small enough that we can handle by the 28th.
Well, oh my goodness, Frank, I agree with you. I do think that I think we're doing both. I believe that 2 weeks isn't going to hurt us. I think that 2 weeks, there are a few things that we can hash out here. But I do believe that there are other issues here that aren't going to happen overnight, can just not be part of this budget because we don't have the time. But they're positive steps forward to the future, and that's all we want for the city. Positive steps to the future. And so, I don't think some of them are going to make it until the next budget go around. But I do believe there's small enough ones here that can. And so I don't think 2 weeks is going to matter from tonight's vote to the next time. Because we may be here again that just says, you know what, okay, good, we got to do 2 of them. The other ones are going to have to wait, and we're going to vote then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We'll
That's
make
good.
the decision then.
And if we could get, maybe just not given to us this night, I have no problem revising it, but if I could have some time to look, I would love, I know it's the last minute for us to get this, but I think that would help me out a little if I could then I could kind of fit it in and go through the budget books and kind of figure out where they're coming from and where we can work it out. It might help me pick out the ones that we can do now.
I'm sure
Mr. Mayor?
they'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a business person that does
Could
that.
we make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Let me start. I think you're on the right track that the motion probably needs to be rescinded. Legally speaking, I think it was a good conversation starter, but I don't know how you incorporate the motion with the lack of definition, the multiple line items into a budget document. So I would recommend that you rescind the motion, and if you want to take some of those items appropriately, individually, and try to incorporate them into a budget at your next meeting, we can try to work with the council members in crafting those motions. We need a little direction as far as what items you may want to think about that you're going to adjust or may not adjust. The sales tax is really a separate item from a budget. Your budget is your expenditure document, that how to spend the money you've taken in. A sales tax needs to be handled as its own separate line item, and I think if you're talking about food, for instance, you're creating separate line items. So that's going to be difficult, I think, for staff to get ready for you in 2 weeks anyway. So I just think you need to have that in your mind when you decide how you want to proceed in this case. So I think everyone's kind of right on this. Some items can be handled in 2 weeks. Some realistically probably can't be handled in 2 weeks.
I think that's true.
I think we need to start by rescinding the motion.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if Larry could say something also.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Council. As the person responsible for the administration of the budget, we've got several thousand line items of code that need to go into our system before July 1st, and that was one of the reasons we targeted tonight for adoption. The items I've heard discussion of, the revenue items don't affect that at all. And as City Attorney has just outlined for you, you can discuss those on the 28th. You can set a different direction there. Likewise on the expenditure, we'll say whether it's the APS expenditure or so forth. If you can direct us as what those items of consideration are, you can also direct as part of the adoption of the budget that no action takes place on this item until the City Council approves it, but it allows the budget to move forward from an administrative perspective. And I'd ask you just to think about that. We obviously will accommodate your wishes as you prefer them. Thank you.
That's an interesting approach. I didn't think about
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
So what we've agreed to do is we've reduced the secondary property tax, right? Right. And we've made no other changes to the tentative budget in a formal manner, right? We've discussed changes to the budget.
Do we need to rescind the motion?
No, yeah,
We need to rescind those motions.
we will do that. Do we, I really believe we can make progress on the 28th, even if it's limited-wise. And I think it's adaptable within your timelines. I hate to miss a couple opportunities, maybe bring a couple small things to the table and implement them as soon as possible. I agree. The taxes themselves, in fact, if you read this, they aren't even talking about changing taxes for 6 months. So taxes and that sort of thing, food and beverage, if we want to reduce that and leave retail sales, that's something that we would discuss subsequently, because that is a paramount, a significant decision. But some of these items, like identified traffic signals currently unnecessary, those sorts of things just save you utility costs and that sort of thing. They can move ahead right away. So there's a few things that can be done, and Joanne had a couple also. Is that going to upset your schedule? Or are you worried about the APS and the vehicle? If we do not make a decision by the 28th on that, does that affect your timeline? Vehicle reserve fund and APS lights, if we did not finalize that on the 28th, would that affect you?
No, nor would it today, because you can always give direction on those items that you want to look at, which can be very broad to include everything that's on the list that they gave. You can give that direction to not move forward in spending that money and so forth. I just wanted to point out the administrative side. I'm sure not trying to spend a long time on that part of the debate. You guys are having a very good discussion on this.
So what you're saying is, you could pass this budget and then meet and make these changes. Is that what you're telling me?
You absolutely can modify the budget on the 28th.
Pass it this evening.
Yes.
with-
And make any adjustments to it 2 weeks from now. You absolutely can. You can also give very clear direction, whether it's tonight or 2 weeks from now, on any item. I'm going to use APS or the fleet, both of them. I'll use them as examples. You can give very clear direction that we do not want you moving forward, direction to staff on that issue until you bring it back to the council specifically for approval. That gives that a chance to make sure that you have that input.
There are other issues that we...
Well, there's other issues, but actually, when it comes down to it, the true definition of what this budget is really saying that X amount of dollars is at this level, and we are not, as a city, once we've adopted this budget, cannot overexpend what that number is. And so, regardless of what ideas we come up with, all we're doing is possibly lowering those expenditures, and that has nothing to do with what we turn into the state, correct? Is that why you really are putting a cap to a budget that's saying you're not going to spend beyond that limit, but nothing is stopping us from saying we can spend below it? Is that what it really is coming down to, as to why it really doesn't matter if we were to approve this budget tonight and still go forward with steps that have been given by the citizens that we've all come up with, that maybe I'm off track, so help me with that.
Okay, the budget as adopted normally is the guideline that we will manage to. And if the budget for my department is X dollars, I cannot go above that, and I will manage to it. However, if you're concerned about an expenditure within my budget, you can already direct me to not spend that, and that's what I'm saying.
We can pass it, but then with that caveat, which allows us the time to meet and make these decisions in a
From your, yeah.
So complicated.
From your discussion tonight, June 28th, you may have modifications. And in September, you may also have modifications. And in both cases, you can do that. Now, September, it might be hard to make a modification if you wanted to do something effective July 1st, obviously. And like I say, I understand and the concern, and if you have concern, I just wanted you to know the administrative part of it. I'm really not trying to, you've got enough to talk about. I don't think you need to spend a lot of time on this specific issue. I just wanted awareness of it.
If I can maybe help a little bit on that from a budget standpoint, again, it's a business plan. So if you adopted the budget tonight and say, do not touch APS lights, do not touch vehicle replacement, till we give you further direction, say on the 28th, Joanne comes in, because remember, you can't exceed a limit, and says, I want you to find money for X. You got to move something from Y to get to X. It's simply a matter of moving appropriations and changing it at that point, because you can't go over yeah, you can. A budget is a plan, all right? You can direct moving different appropriations as long as there's the appropriation line item for there. If she says, I want to do X, then manager would come back, well, to get the money for that, we got to take it from Y, and it's a simple budget amendment to do that. Okay? But my point is what I think Larry's trying to say is you can pass it by saying, we're not giving you authorization on the APS lights, we're not giving you authorization on the vehicle replacement or some other line item in here until the council gives you authorization. That way you're dealing with those specific issues. It's just an administrative issue for Larry, so they can start inputting the stuff in. When he gets to the 26th, but they got to put all these line items in, they got till July 1 to do that for all the individual budget line items. I think that's what he's getting to. Is that a fair statement, Larry? That's all.
And we haven't seen this year's expenditures yet either, so we need to see that. I mean, is that
what do you mean by expenditures?
well? Third quarter. We haven't even seen third quarter's expenditures. What have you spent up to the end of third quarter?
We have provided that. We'll have to check on that.
No, you haven't provided it. Well, I've got second up to second quarter. I don't have third.
Okay, we'll have to check on that.
Was that given to us? No, not third quarter.
I personally would just prefer to recess on this and meet again on the 28th and make a decision on the budget. A couple of us have not approved the budget in the last year or two, and it's an important decision to us, as it is to everybody, but I'm not sure I'm ready to vote yes on this, and I'd like to come to a yes vote. I couldn't do it tonight, so, but maybe with just a few modifications, that can happen. So I would prefer that we recess and pick this up on the 28th. But if you all want to make a motion to move on approval now.
We got to recess.
Okay, let's rescind the one motion. Okay?
Okay.
And I'll second the rescission.
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Well, here was the second over here.
We've typically allowed members to rescind their motions that they make.
Yeah.
It's not really in line with Robert.
I'll rescind my motion.
And I was the second, so I'll rescind the second.
Oh, Joe was.
I was the second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then
Who's on?
That's right, Joe is the second.
Yeah, who's on first? No, what's on second? I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
We'll consider it rescinded.
Who did the motion?
Well,
Now you're back to the main motion.
yeah.
With your amendment.
Do you want to vote on that motion now, or do you want to delay and incorporate a revision to the citizens' input and Joanne's input? And I don't think we're talking about a long meeting on the 28th. I think we know.
Well, I
Yeah,
personally.
I think we should.
I personally want to vote on it, but with meeting on the 28th, with all these suggestions that the citizens have and that Joanne and the rest of you have had. I think technically that helps Larry and the department get on with that, and that's.
I don't think it makes that much difference.
Well, it makes a difference from the standpoint of the administrative work that has to be done to input this budget. That's what Larry's talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
I mean, the 28th is what, 3 days before the 1st? I mean,
Okay, then why can't it be the next week, like the 21st or whatever?
Yeah.
Whatever next Monday is.
Could we make one?
Good.
About.
Can we have a special meeting?
I suspect that there's very little work that can be done between Monday and getting the packets out Thursday.
Well, the 21st, do you want to try the 21st?
Would it give Larry more time?
Yeah, it gives Larry time.
And see, and I think I have flight reservations on the 28th, and I have to check.
Well,
I have to check.
Vice Mayor won't be here the 28th, so that doesn't work very well. We do need all of us here.
The 28th
28th.
I think the
Well, the 28th, we have council
I'm
meeting.
sorry, I left my phone in the car, so I can't look at my calendar.
Then do we want to have a special meeting a little earlier? Cut the difference, maybe Wednesday or something?
On a Monday, right? Could be a Wednesday instead.
I didn't get that.
Can we cut the difference to maybe do a meeting on a Wednesday if she's got to fly out so everybody's here the Wednesday before? That gives you
That would like be the 23rd or something.
something like that, or?
That's fine by me, you know.
We need some specific direction about what you want us to consider and talk about.
Well, my understanding, I'm sorry, but the sales taxes we're saving for a retreat, right? So we're taking the sales taxes out of these proposals.
My understanding, the revenues are off. You're looking at the expenditure side.
Okay, I wasn't quite sure.
And what on the expenditures? I guess I'm confused with that.
I'm guessing APS.
We've spent a lot of months on this budget.
I'm guessing APS lights, the vehicle replacement, the uniform allowance, and traffic signals, and I don't know what other.
Excuse me, what about the traffic signals?
No, it's not traffic signals.
No, not the traffic signals.
Street lights.
Street lights.
APS.
APS street lights, reserve fund.
And I'm sorry, what about the reserve fund?
That's the question, I
reserve
guess.
fund?
The 1.5 vehicle replacement.
Oh, vehicle
replacement. The police uniform allowance, half of it, I guess, was on the list. And I don't know if Joanne had something else. Those are probably what else was it, Joanne?
The alarm
Talking
system.
about the business liaison.
The alarm system.
He had some other ideas
Well,
before that.
the employee tuition reimbursements.
And quite frankly, those are administrative type things that I can check into and see what we need to do.
I didn't know that we were so far apart on the vehicle replacement. I mean, I know it's in here, but I didn't get that when you were all talking. I assumed that, I thought I heard from you that you felt that there should be a vehicle replacement. So, I mean, when you say, well, we have to talk about the vehicle replacement, and
Yes.
and I thought it showed that the APS light system paid for itself.
Well,
And,
yeah, I
and
did,
so
actually.
so that's another positive.
It was the tax issues.
Yeah,
that
so
were my
that's what
main
I'm saying.
ones
So we're
that- those are can't come forward anyway. But
so I question.
Well, we're not
why are we
ready
doing
tonight,
this
that's for sure.
that?
Well, you know,
We're still going to accomplish what the citizens want us to accomplish. We're going to come together to these different issues and incorporate a plan. Am I wrong?
if we're going to be talking tax changes or tax reductions in this coming fiscal year, in October or September or whatever, there's got to be room to have a tax reduction. And that means you got to have cost cuts. And that's part of this budget right now. And some of those things have been brought up. The vehicle reserve fleet, the APS, the 4-day, 10-day work week, 10-hour work week, the replace traffic signals with stop signs, et cetera. You know, there's things here and police uniform, there's things here which would cut the cost of doing business. If we would incorporate those in the budget, then that gives you room to actually talk legitimately and realistically on cutting taxes in the next fiscal year.
Well, we're absolutely redoing the entire budget, is what we're saying now.
No, that's not true.
No, I think I mentioned 4 or 5 things, so.
No, you're not looking at the entire budget. You're looking at pieces of it.
Well, and quite frankly, what we've recommended, what Larry recommended, is approve the budget with those 4 or 5 things, whatever they are, frozen. We can certainly take a look at that. That allows the staff to input the information into the system.
It works if you're willing to freeze those things that the mayor just mentioned.
Well, then let's do it.
Are you on board with that, Mayor?
If in fact, does that help you? I couldn't.
That would clearly help, and that would also give the specific direction of the issues that you wanted to talk about to make sure we had the information for you. That would help from the administrative perspective, yes. And whether it's 4 or 5, 10 items, whatever that is, you control that number.
So if we approve the budget tonight, you can accommodate reductions in that budget in 2 weeks?
Yes, we can accommodate reductions in 2 weeks, and further, if there are, you can go beyond to earmark certain items that even if you don't talk 2 weeks about them, you can discuss them even in September, such as some of those you've mentioned.
If I could, one other comment is that one of the things Joanne mentioned was expenditure two things were expenditure increases. One was the tuition reimbursement program. So we would have to find, Rurik, help me, what would have to be done?
Well, you can't exceed your expenditure limit, but you'll just do
But I
it
gave
from
you an offset.
another line item, right?
Though.
Yeah,
So you've
that
got-
would have to have an offset, and with a
Identify
total
them.
of $255 million, if that were the wish, as they could. But I would expect there are going to be expenditure reductions that would offset regardless, so.
But you'll need to identify that if you're going to do that tonight.
But that's doable.
Yes.
So if we would vote on the budget tonight, the budget passes, and if we can't come to an agreement on these 5 or 6 items, then people pass the budget really with results on that budget that they don't agree with.
What I understand is that if, say, those 4 or 5 things, for sake of argument, if you can't come to agreement, those things won't be incorporated into our spending plan.
And we would vote on that, is that correct? I.e.,
You would vote on coming to an agreement. And if you don't come to an agreement, if you're saying tonight that we can't do APS lights until the council gives direction to do it, we can't do that.
so then what we would do now is, and we've got some small ideas we want to bring to the table in 2 weeks, or our group does, but we would exclude APS lights in the vehicle reserve from the budget at this time, and we might bring it into the budget on the 28th.
Might.
No,
Conceptually, I think it'd be slightly different than that. What it would be, because if you exclude it, you can't add it back. All it would be is freeze it so that it cannot be spent.
That's the problem.
Same concept. You still are not authorizing any expenditure of the money, you're just appropriating should you authorize it later. I'm being a little technical when I'm saying that, but it has the same
Gives you the
effect
freedom.
of what you're asking for.
Yeah,
So it's freezing them.
it's freezing them.
But it's saying
For you to
that
make
if
the
we
decision.
find a way, if we were to say right now, we're voting on this budget, but we're taking out the expense of the APS lights and the expense of that vehicle account, if you pull that expense out, and then we vote on the budget, we couldn't come back on the 28th and add those expenses back.
What you're doing is freezing the expenditure of the...
I know that. No, but I'm explaining that's why we can't do it that way. That's why you still just freeze the line, but it's still within that top amount for the budget. It's just a placeholder.
Correct.
Well, the fact that it was in the tentative budget gives you that authority anyway. That was the top line.
Yes, you're right, that is a top line.
So we need to freeze it.
But by freezing it, we're dealing with 5 issues, or whatever that number was that you cited, Mayor. Those 5. We're dealing with those 5 issues on the 28th, and they can go do their job starting tomorrow.
Okay, should we identify the issues?
Yeah, well, you said them. What were the 5 issues?
Okay.
Say them again.
Well, you have a couple now.
Well, what were the ones you said?
Well, we have the apps light system.
Okay, freezing the APS traffic lights and vehicle replacement reserve, reducing police uniform allowance by a half, limit fire overtime to 700,000. And that could be obviously, so let's discuss that. And how about replacing only 1 of every 2 personnel losses that are losses through attrition? Identify traffic signals which are currently unnecessary and temporarily replaced with stop signs. And then do we want to think about this 4-day Monday through Thursday and save money, and I guess you'd save money in utilities for 3 days of the week.
Yeah.
No, if people have small children, to put them in daycare, you're putting a child in daycare for 12 hours a day. I had friends that went to that, and they were obviously not happy about it.
I don't know much about it. I do know other cities are doing it.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot, it really hurts mostly women.
Well, we wouldn't want to do that. So,
We really would. As the only, one with little kids here.
I'm not big on that subject. I just,
I'm not
Well,
either.
and finding a daycare that's.
it's a way to save money on
That's-
utilities.
It isn't a way to save a
But
lot
you-
of money,
It's
though.
not a huge
Well, other
amount.
people disagree with you.
Well, they haven't shown us where they're saving the money, though, yet, either.
What were the items? Can you go over those
we'll find
items
out.
again? What were the items we're talking about?
No, we just said APS lights,
Vehicle replacement.
vehicle replacement.
I mean, I don't agree
I
with.
can't read my writing.
The,
The fire,
the fire you're going to have a problem with because it says unless necessary to respond to emergencies. So if you freeze the overtime, then do they have any money to go on? I mean, it's very specific on what that says there. So you got to be careful on that one.
And we have to be careful that we budget the FLSA totally,
Right.
and that we still need some funds for the constant staffing. So they can't really direct, you can't really direct us as to what we have to spend on overtime.
Well, you budget
They're
it.
just for an emergency.
And I think that, I don't know the numbers well enough right this moment. I don't think 700,000 is enough even for FLSA.
No, it is. This year it's 794 total. FLSA is 631 or something like that.
Okay. So we would have 70,000 to spend on constant staffing. That's just unrealistic. To provide the services to the public and continue the public safety is critical. We need to spend whatever we need to spend. And I'm not arguing. You don't want to lock yourselves in this early. Let us come back.
yeah.
do this on the
I don't agree
28th.
with, I don't agree with that one, and I don't agree with the police uniform allowance. I don't agree with that either. I'm
Well,
sorry.
you're one of 7, and I'm one of 7, and
No,
we'll vote on it.
I'm just saying I don't agree
We'll
with that
vote
one.
on it then.
We're talking about
I
it.
don't
so-
agree. An officer was just shot. Those vests are important and they're expensive.
Seems like we're going nowhere as far as freezing anything here.
I think we need to, this thing needs to be put off.
Yeah, I do too.
It's kind of a shame because it's going to, I guess, from an administration. And maybe Larry, you can get a general gist of 5. I don't know what you got to do to get a jump start on some of this stuff, but
Well, if
He can get a jump start
it
without.
would seem to me that if you
escalating.
brought something to a vote, something would pass, rather than wait until the 28th and give us no direction.
I'll make a motion. So, can I make a motion?
Well, we've got a motion on the floor.
I make a motion, we approve the budget with the, I don't know how to call this, with the placeholders of being the business liaison. Is that what it was called? Joanne mentioned the APS lights, the vehicle replacement, and I think the traffic signals was the other one.
What about the
Tuition.
smoke
tuition.
alarm,
Tuition reimbursement.
tuition reimbursement,
And-
and the smoke alarm? Didn't you have the
Smoke alarm
alarm
volunteer.
system
No,
on
no,
your
no,
list?
it's the alarm, the housing alarm.
That was a volunteer. That doesn't mean.
That's what?
That was a volunteer position.
Oh.
For false alarms.
For false alarms, yeah.
That was a volunteer position.
And the tuition reimbursement.
So that's 4 items.
I think I got 4 items there.
One question I would have is, what traffic lights are being talked about,
I don't know which that was.
being removed? I mean, I don't know
think
either.
they're staying.
APS lights then?
Oh,
No, those are two different
Traffic
lights.
lights and stop signs, I assume, are specific issues at specific intersections. Where are they?
By the shopping center, by where the
And I'll
West
take-
Core Shopping Center area, I think that.
Well, they're all over.
Can't
There's
they
several.
provide that within the next few days, or?
You probably want to think about liability issues there in traffic studies too. So
So
I
I'll
think
take
that's-
that one out of my motion then.
Yeah.
So I think I got.
But the APS lights is what that you were talking about.
APS light.
I mean, that's still something you can do afterwards as far
Yeah.
as. I still think that's something you can do afterwards, even if it's not.
That's all right.
So.
Let it go. We gotta get out of here.
No, so we have a motion, I think.
Okay, and I'll second it.
All right, and you'll second it? Okay.
What is Sherry, can I hear Sherry's motion?
Could you read it back? I don't even know what I started listing. APS, vehicle replacement fund, tuition reimbursement, the business liaison.
Which doesn't have to be in there. Does it have to
I
be in
think
there?
that was it.
So
So approve the budget, everything else as written.
Okay, and there'll be balance transfers to cover the tuition reimbursement, the 250 some
I think just
thousand.
have a placeholder until the 28th for those issues.
Okay, so you want to budget through a balance transfer, so
I
it's in
want
the
to budget
budget
through a balance transfer.
for that position. You're adding a position for business liaison.
Yes. Add a position for business liaison.
Larry, that's going to be 2 balance transfers from other funds, correct? Okay.
All right.
2 freezes, 2 increases, sort of.
Yes.
And I second it.
That's an amendment.
Do I need a roll call? I don't I?
That's going to be an amendment to your main motion right now, I think. So you're going to take just a voice vote on the amendment, and then that'll be incorporated into a main motion if you choose to make that vote tonight.
Okay.
So is this a
4 things.
Voice
Okay.
vote.
voice vote?
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the
Amendment.
the motion to freeze
No, the amendment.
the amendment to the main motion, which freezes the APS lights and the vehicle reserve, and what we doing with the
2 others.
tuition reimbursement or something?
And the business.
Okay, and not freeze those, consider those for inclusion.
Consider those, yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of that motion, this is an amendment to the main motion. All those in favor of the amended motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll oppose it. I'll have a nay vote. So it's 6-1. Are we ready for the main motion vote? We have, it's on the table, okay? All right, so all those, no, this is a roll call.
on this one.
Just roll call.
Councilmember Cavalier,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Marzano,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lord,
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa,
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Nay. Okay,
I only have a quickie.
yeah, I know, I can't, I gotta find my paper.
I have to say, I have to say this.
Mayor, you need,
I'm trying to find it. Okay, if you stand by a minute, we'll be out of here in a few seconds here. Okay, we did the roll call vote. I'm adjourning the special meeting. And there are no more business items to discuss. Is there any information items?
Yes, I need to say this. I received a call from a Pebble Creek resident, Stan Pritchard, and he wanted to be sure that I said this on the dais this evening. He praised the outstanding fire crew who responded to his home on an emergency call. Unfortunately, his wife did die on this call. He wanted me to relay to the council how respectful, how caring the team was and treated the entire situation. He felt like they handled his wife with such respect and helped him through this very, very tragic moment. And I hope I don't mispronounce the names, guys, but he wanted me to tell you the names. It's crew number 185C shift, Captain Mike Esinas, Engineer Mike Cole, firefighter Liam Tierney, and Robbie Williams. And it was a heartful thanks for everything that you did for them. And that's why they're worth the pay they get.
Exactly.
And is that going to be in the minutes? We want to make sure that's in the minutes.
I'll have
Good.
this through.
Okay, anything else, City Manager?
I have one more thing. Hey, the hazard collection day was a success. Did any of you go? And I just want to say we had a deputy city manager working that, and also from Parks and Works we're working on that. So thank you for all your work.
Meeting's adjourned.